Our meeting of December 6th. Roll call.
Mayor Brinkman,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallman,
Here.
Councilmember Cole,
Here.
Councilmember Cernanik,
Present.
Councilmember Beckman,
Here.
Councilmember Valdez,
Present.
Councilmember Taylor.
Present.
This evening, we have the Boy Scout Troop 685 from Abiding Hope Lutheran Church visiting with us. Are they in attendance? Oh, there you are. Would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Everyone stand.
Belt it out. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. The agenda from November 15th, the minutes from the agenda of November 15th, do we have any changes?
I have one correction under minutes 4B. It should be minutes of special session, not work session.
Repeat that again. Where are you?
On item 4, minutes B, it should be minutes of special session. That's what they were called in the minutes.
Okay, any other changes? All right, those are accepted as amended. The minutes from November 29th. Okay, seeing no changes, those are accepted as presented. Are there any changes to the agenda this evening, besides the one I just made? Okay, seeing none.
That was the one that Peggy made. She made the change to the agenda.
Well, I jumped ahead and went to minutes and skipped the approval on the agenda.
I just want to make sure that that was listed as part of the
Okay.
change that Peggy made on the agenda.
Did you get that, Wendy? And item, under the actual agenda we have, on item 4B, it says minutes of work session, but those minutes say special session.
Okay. Okay, introduction of new city employees, city
Yes, Mayor.
manager.
Yes, Mayor, we have one, Deborah Flom, right here. She's originally from Moray, Australia. She and her husband, as well as their two kids, moved to Colorado in 2009 due to her husband getting a job in Denver, and so we're pleased to have her. She's got two children, as I just said, and what she describes as the most expensive pets in the world, a dog and a cat, because she had to get them here from Australia and go through the customs and the health department and all. So welcome, Deborah. We're pleased to have you.
Welcome, Deborah. I think at least some of us up here will recognize you from interviews for the boards and commissions, so we're glad to have you in the family. Welcome.
Thanks.
Okay, citizen appearances. This evening, we are honored to do our annual presentation to recognize the winners of the 2012 Littleton Calendar and Annual Report Photography Contest. I will ask Mayor Pro Tem Stallman to read the information on that and then to call out the names of those who have won. As your name is called out, please come down to the dais down here, and I have a gift for you. Oh, you've got yours.
This evening, the Littleton City Council is pleased to recognize the winners of the 2012 Littleton Calendar and Annual Report Photography Contest. For the past 32 years, photographers have been shooting their favorite scenes in Littleton for entry in the Littleton Calendar Contest. 4 members of the Littleton Fine Arts Committee selected the winners from 184 prints submitted by 54 entrants. In addition to the beautiful photographs, the calendar features the City of Littleton Annual Report. The popular calendar is now available at the Littleton Center, Bemis Library, the Littleton Museum, Town Hall Arts Center, and from the calendar's generous sponsors. The major sponsors are Colorado Business Bank, Chase Bank, Bradford Auto Body Incorporated, Western Welcome Week, Life Care Center of Littleton, GDM Management Incorporated, McDonald's, Remax Classic, Holly Walker, Steinley Realty Services Incorporated, Littleton Adventist Hospital, Reinke Brothers Incorporated, Stu Maher Commonwealth Realty Services, and Aspen Grove Lifestyle Center. Additional sponsors are Lautenbach Insurance Agency, Henry's Jewelry Company Incorporated, Marie Callender's Restaurant, and Monty Nuss Photography. And this year's winners are, for January, Linda Olson. February was Bob Witherell. March was Claudia Cangela McAdam. Cangela? I'm sorry. April, David Erie. May was Linda Grace Hickey. There you go. All right. June was Eric Jones. July, Heidi Irene Wally.
Whaley.
What is it?
Whaley.
I'm sorry, Whaley. There we go. August was Stephen Johnson.
Steven. 50-50 chance.
A little bit more of an adventure than I had anticipated. So it's September was Gail Berry. That one I can get. October, Ellen Mackey. November, Jerry Parton. December, Lynn Fuhrer. And the cover was by Jerry Donovan. Littleton City Council congratulates the 2012 calendar winners for their skill in capturing the beauty of the city.
Thank you all.
Okay, we have a scheduled public appearance, Jenny Ranville, Reshaping Cities 2+, Family-Friendly Cities.
I promise to give it to you.
No worries.
My name is Jennifer Ranville. I live at 1227 West Weaver Circle, Littleton. And I'm presenting tonight what is called Reshaping Cities 2+. And I presented at the EcoCity World Summit this summer. And this is modified from that presentation to specifically look at the city of Littleton. And the 2+ is looking at 2+ generation households, especially parents raising children, adult children caring for aging parents and extended family. And the city of Littleton being family friendly, it is great that we received the award, Best Place to Raise Kids in Colorado in 2011 from the Bloomberg Business Week. And the city of Littleton has many strengths, and it's one of the reasons why I live in the city of Littleton and raise children here. Now, one of the things in the research and going into the demographics, it's interesting, and I've asked and asking myself the question of, because we are family friendly, are our demographics represented in our child population? And there's a lot of information that I have for the data, but I want to simplify it. First is just to see in the metropolitan area, how does the city of Littleton compare to other cities? And we are on the lower end of the percent population under the age 18. We are on the upper end for the population 65 years and over. When we look at the demographics in the city of Littleton, or in the city, metropolitan cities, the top aging population is the city of Wheat Ridge, and the second is the city of Littleton. And I can understand why, and that many citizens, once they live here, they want to stay here. One of the things is, though, is that more young families would like to live in the city of Littleton, and however, the affordable housing options for families is limited, especially as the family size grows and requires more bedrooms. And Highlands Ranch certainly is a competitive factor for providing affordable housing. And a plan that addresses housing for families with children as well as senior adults is needed. And looking at that, not being able to have more families with children finding housing here equates to a declining school enrollment. I wanted to bring forward that in the Embracing Littleton's Future 2009 report, talked about the type of housing retired adults were looking for, especially as they age and not being able to handle stairs, with patio, cluster homes, townhomes, main floor living. And as well as it mentions the investigate ways that City of Littleton can help encourage a healthy enrollment in the district. And here are just a couple ideas to make Littleton more family friendly. And the first is looking at housing from more of a multi-generational approach. There's a great article called Multi-Generational Planning that was produced by the American Planning Association, which is one of their family-friendly communities briefing papers. And that is just exceptional to talk about that seniors and families raising children share a lot of the same needs, and that the closer that they are brought in proximity, the higher interaction that we have. Community land trust is another idea for affordable housing. It was successfully implemented in Burlington, Vermont. Essentially, the resident purchases the house, but the nonprofit owns the land, and they pay a lease on the land. And it's a way that young families can buy a first house. Local food is another one that is increasing in popularity, as well as just the many benefits that it has for health, as well as low cost, and knowing where your food is being grown. And just looking at the potential of maybe having a Littleton local food initiative. There's a number of various groups in the Denver area that have initiatives that are great to reference. Another idea as well is increasing entertainment for families that are looking for entertainment for all ages. And it's great that we have many of these wonderful Western Welcome Week, and as well as lighting downtown Littleton and bringing Santa, draws a lot of families. And it'd be great that not just for a few events throughout the year, but on a more ongoing basis to bring families to downtown Littleton to enjoy. Young ideas, increasing involvement with the youth in the city planning process, and potentially having a design competition for school-age children, and just encouraging more young children to be welcome to join public sessions and to participate. And I've begun to mentor a few children here in the city of Littleton, ages kindergarten through high school, and they have great ideas. So it'd be great to to have more involvement of our youth. And I want to also thank City Council as well as our city for implementing, well, we're in the process of implementing, but for adopting the bicycle and pedestrian master plan. And just as you move forward, to keep in mind the families as far as the safety, that the more family-friendly those bicycle lanes are, the more families will use them. As well as potentially look at bike sharing stations, especially around the light rail. These are specific slides that I presented at the EcoCity World Summit, and I'll move through them pretty quickly. But essentially, identifying the business center, family center, and resource centers within the city. This is the metropolitan area that I did this for diagram, looking at where are the larger households living with families. And Highlands Ranch is certainly one of those competitors next to the city of Littleton. And our business centers, certainly around Denver, and our resource centers, and it's great that we have a farmer's market, and we are on the light rail connection. Now, the reason why I just wanted to bring up the diagrams is I think it would be great to identify primary and supporting business centers, family centers, and resource centers for the city of Littleton in that diagramming exercise. I think could be helpful as a visual communication tool to direct updating the citywide comp plan, especially to see that our family households where they're living in conjunction with the services like schools and other facilities, that increasing that connection. And these are a couple guiding principles for Reshaping Cities 2+. And the one area I wanted to emphasize that I think the housing is one that is an area, so many strengths for the city of Littleton, but the housing is one that I believe is one that we should be looking at addressing closer. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Could I make a comment?
Yes.
Jennifer, I think that's a outstanding, a very powerful message that you're delivering there. And I'd like to see a lot of that maybe implemented. I think if that had come forth in the downtown comp plan, some of those ideas, that I probably wouldn't have been making so many amendments to it when it came before us. But Mr. Manager, could you get us a copy of the presentation she made and also the other document? I think there's one of them here somewhere.
Absolutely, and I'll work with Jennifer and get the full presentation as well. And in light of our study sessions that we've been having, I wrote down some ideas in terms of the goals and objectives to propose to the council based upon this. I too thought it was a great presentation. Thank you.
Jennifer, are you okay with one question? There was one slide that had the guiding principles.
Yes.
How are those developed, or how were they developed?
You know, my background is I'm an architect, and so I was looking at, and I've also been researching various family-friendly cities, and so I was pointing out and seeing a pattern that there are certain areas that if you're strong in these, it certainly attracts more families. If you're weaker in these areas, it's going to cause families to move away. So that was part of the criteria, certainly, in assembling those 12.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, our next item is unscheduled public appearances. This is an opportunity for any citizen to express an opinion or ask questions regarding city services, council policies, or other matters of community concern that are not part of the scheduled agenda. We do have a public hearing this evening, item 8A, regarding South Platte River Enhancement Project. So if you want to speak about that, please wait till the public hearing portion of the meeting. So do we have, oh, that's for the public hearing. So is there anyone in the audience who wants to come down and unscheduled? Pam? State your name and address, please. Keys?
They were up here. Okay. Hi, my name is Pam Chadbourne. I live at 5402 South Nevada Street in District 1. I'm here tonight because I know the council is considering procedural changes, and I have a recommendation based on my last about year and a quarter of interaction regarding street lighting downtown, the repeal of the lighting code, and the downtown neighborhood plan. And what my request is for procedures, and you'll be relieved to see I have no view graphs tonight, is I'd like the council and the city to begin a more structured approach to change. And when a change is proposed, what I would like is a change summary, which would state clearly who's requesting the change and why. Then I would like a set of structured impacts from, let's say, safety, let's say police and fire, businesses, residents, city programs, let's say with the bike plan or something like that. Just a checklist so that staff could go through that and collect impacts of what that change would be. One of them is cost. Now, I understand that we have organization in our city, and I want the walls broken down between the organizations. So there should be a chance for engineers and cost and planning to put inputs into a change summary. Then staff can present that to council. We, public, can hear those impacts in an integrated way and then consider the change. I would be able to evaluate your decisions better, and I honestly believe this council and staff are good people, very experienced, very knowledgeable, and with good intentions. And I believe with better structured data, we would have a greater sense of community and potentially stronger decisions for the future. So that's my recommendation, change summary structured for changes.
Thank you, Pam.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay. We will move to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items can be adopted by a simple motion. All ordinances and resolutions must be read by title, and a consent agenda item can be removed at the request of a council member. Consent agenda item A is ordinance on first reading amending the 2011 budget. City Attorney?
An ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending ordinance number 26, series of 2010, known as the Annual Appropriation Bill for all municipal purposes of the City of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Jefferson, and Douglas, State of Colorado, for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2011, and ending December 31, 2011.
This is a budget amendment. Oh, did you want to pull it? Okay. That has been pulled. 7B is a motion to approve the use of a Lady Street for Soapbox Derby. And basically, it's an authorization for the Littleton Sertoma Club to use a Lady Street from Peakview to Arapahoe Road on Saturday and Sunday, June 2nd and 3rd, 2012, from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. for the Soapbox Derby. Okay. And 7C is a resolution to award the Littleton City Center roof replacement contract to Black Roofing as the most qualified bidder. This is it is requested that the City Council approve this resolution to award the replacement of the Littleton City Center roof to Black Roofing as the most qualified bidder. Littleton City Charter, Section 97, entitled Competitive Bidding, states the lowest and best bid shall be accepted, or all bids will be rejected. If the lowest bid is not accepted as being the best bid, such rejection must be approved by council. So
Mayor,
that's being pulled. Sorry,
I say we need to have it read by title.
do we have, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead, City Attorney, please.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, to award the Littleton City Center roof replacement contract to Black Roofing as the most qualified bidder.
Thank you. So that's also been pulled. Need a motion to approve consent agenda item B.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded to approve B, the use of a lottie for the soapbox. Vote, please. City Clerk.
Sorry, the motion carries. I forgot I was supposed to do that. The motion is the vote is unanimous.
Thank you.
Sorry.
All right, Councilmember Cole, I believe you pulled A.
Yes, there's an error on the ordinance on the date, so it needs to be amended. So first, I don't have a problem with this, so I'll make the motion and then move to amend the ordinance.
Okay, would you mind if I read the detail of it real briefly for? This is a budget amendment ordinance with changes to the Consolidated Special Revenue Fund for the 2011 budget. The part of the Consolidated Special Revenue Fund includes our wildfire fund. And throughout the year, fire personnel have been deployed on wildland fires within Colorado and across the United States. These expenditures are reimbursed to the city after a deployment. In 2011 budget, we budgeted $100,000. However, deployment reimbursements amounted to $325,500. This request is for the additional $225,500. Another part of the Consolidated Special Revenue Fund is the South Metro Drug Task Force. The city received $218,000 from Arapahoe County in 2011 to fund a member of the South Metro Drug Task Force for 2 years, along with a vehicle lease. This appropriation is for the portion of these funds that were spent in 2011. Okay, your amendment, or the motion, please, Peggy?
I move that the proposed budget amendment ordinance amending the 2011 annual appropriation bill, increasing total expenditures by $261,500 be approved on first reading, setting the public hearing for December 13, 2011, and publishing the proposed ordinance by posting at the Littleton Center, Bemis Library, Municipal Courthouse, and on the City of Littleton website.
I'll second.
Okay.
And then I would move to amend the second page of the ordinance itself. Next to the last paragraph, public hearing on the ordinance to take place on, change the 20th to the 13th day of December, 2011, et cetera.
Second.
Okay, the amendment is to change the public hearing from the 20th to the 13th on the ordinance. Council ready to vote? Oh, I'm sorry, is there any discussion? Bruce?
Just more of an information item so everybody understands it. Per my communication with City Finance Director Doug Farman this morning, this particular fund is 100% related to the city. I shouldn't say the fund. This particular amount of money is related 100% to the city and is not shared with the two fire partners, Littleton Fire Protection District nor Highlands Ranch Metro District. Just confirming that. Doug is nodding his head in assent, so just want to make sure this is 100% city money.
Okay. Okay, ready to vote on the amendment, which was to change the public hearing to the 13th on the ordinance? Everybody vote? Okay.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries.
Okay, then we're back to the original motion. Motion to approve and schedule the meeting for the public hearing for December 13th.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries.
Okay, that's passed. And 7C. Who pulled 7C? Was that Peggy? Okay.
You know, it's minor, but let me go ahead and move the main motion, and then I'll move to amend.
All right.
I move to approve the resolution to award the contract to replace the Littleton City Center roof to Black Roofing as the most qualified bidder.
I'll second.
And actually, I do have a question. I think I talked to the city manager about this. Whether or not we would be able to increase the coverage to cover larger than 2-inch hail. And I thought maybe you were looking into that, were you, Michael?
Yeah, and I'll ask if Dave wants to respond or Phil. I believe there may be some
Well,
other
people are
questions as
coming
well.
down, this covers the contract of re-roofing this whole place that is in dire need of re-roofing, and
Absolutely in dire
and
need.
and the contract would be covering replacement if we got up to 2-inch hail, and so I had a question about that.
Right now, 2 inches is the highest we can go.
So, and I can't remember in the almost 40 years I've been in Littleton that we've had something even that large, but,
I don't think so. This is a gentleman from Black Roofing who worked.
Mike? Phil, talk in the mic.
This is the gentleman from Black Roofing that could answer that question as far as the 2-inch being the highest standard.
okay.
Please state your name and address.
Daniel J. Zatilla, 9845 Shoreline Drive, Longmont, Colorado.
Thank you.
The highest hail that you can get in any manufacturer is 2 inches. The 1990 hail probably is the only hail that's ever exceeded that, and there would be no roof system that survived that hail. And that was in 1990. Now, 2 years ago, we've had the second largest hailstorm in July and the sixth largest hailstorm in June, and neither one of those exceeded the 2 inches. The one last year in Commerce City area did, but as a practical purpose, I've never seen a problem. 2 inches is a pretty gutsy move by a manufacturer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then I believe I did ask the city manager this question too. Since the three lowest bids were fairly close in price, I wondered why we didn't vet the third least expensive.
Well, the second lowest, as far as that we went, we're satisfied with the responses we got with the references and the way they submitted their RFP. We certainly could have went to the third, but at that point, we thought that was enough for us.
That's okay. I just
Yeah.
thought we should have public statement of that. Thank you. Then my amendment on this is a minor technicality in the phrasing of the now therefore part of this resolution. It says, now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, that to award the contract of the Littleton City Center roof replacement to Black Roofing as the most qualified bidder. So I will, for the sake of grammar, since obviously I love grammar, to take out the word that so that this makes grammatical sense. The minor thing, but sorry, with all that we were studying tonight otherwise, I just didn't get a chance to ask just to have an updated version of this.
Okay, we need a second.
Second.
Okay, we have an amendment to remove that. On now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado. Vote.
The motion, or the vote is 7 in favor. The motion is unanimous.
Okay, back to the main motion with the amendment to approve Black Roofing as the most qualified bidder. Barry?
The vote is unanimous.
Okay. 7C passes. Okay.
Thank you.
8A. 8A is related to South Platte River Enhancement Project. And this evening, we have the South Suburban Park and Rec Board of Directors here. This is, kind of give a little bit of background, the South Platte River Enhancement Project is an effort by the Urban Drainage and Flood Control District, South Suburban Parks and Rec, and the City of Littleton to make some changes in the South Platte River through South Platte Park. In order to proceed with this effort to the next phase, it is appropriate to have a public hearing on the proposed improvements, and if council wishes to move ahead, approve the enclosed intergovernmental agreement with Urban Drainage and Flood Control and South Suburban Parks and Rec. The South Suburban Parks and Rec Board of Directors is present this evening to participate in the public hearing and will vote on the proposed IGA. I'd like to take a moment to introduce the board. Kate Geithner, Chair. Suzanne Rosser, Assistant Chair.
Susan.
I'm sorry, Susan. It's my first night up here as mayor, so I'm going to make some flubs.
Been called worse.
Okay, I got it half right. John Ostemiller, Treasurer. Michael T. Anderson, Assistant Secretary and Treasurer. Pamela Eller, Secretary. And Dave Lorenz is here as Executive Director, South Suburban. Thank you. Okay, Charlie Bloston will present.
Good evening, Council and Board. I'm Charlie Bloston, the City of Littleton Director of Public Services. What I'm going to do tonight is set the stage, and then other people will perform. We have a fairly long slideshow we would like to show to the Board and Council demonstrating the advantages and benefits of the enhancements that are proposed for this project. Tonight, this project involves the Urban Drainage and Flood Control District, represented by Laura Kroger and Dave Bennett of the district. From South Suburban, we have Melissa Reese-Thacker, Jim Pretty, and Scott Latona also was very involved with this project. He's with South Platte Park. Troy Thompson and Dave Block, did I say that right, Dave? Okay. From ERC, they are the consultants that prepared the conceptual plan. I'd also like to introduce Todd Fair from Trout Unlimited. Todd helped us with this project as well. It's a team effort. And from the City of Littleton, I represented the city staff. I will tell you, I was surrounded on this project by numerous experts, which is important with this whole activity. It originated in 2010 when the City Council and the South Suburban Park Board of Directors approved an intergovernmental agreement with the Urban Drainage and Flood Control District to do the conceptual plan. Because the City of Littleton owns the park, we were a participant in that IGA, even though we did not contribute any funds to the project. The next step in the process is to review the slideshow, the conceptual plan, the amendment to the intergovernmental agreement, which will authorize the project to proceed to the next step. Now, there's one thing that always comes up in projects like this, and what is it going to cost, and how comfortable are we with the budget? The money from the City of Littleton for this project is in the 2011 budget already. All we have to do is authorize it through the intergovernmental agreement tonight. The budget for this project is very comfortable. We feel confident that the improvements that are going to be proposed tonight can be accomplished within the budget that we have established. With that introduction, I'd like to introduce Dave and Troy from ERC to make the presentation, which is a slideshow of about 40 slides. Gentlemen?
Thank you, Charlie. I'm Dave Blau with the Ecological Resource Consultants, and this is Troy Thompson. We have a little bit of a slideshow here, so we'll try to go through it as fast as possible. There we go. Everybody hear me? Tonight, we'd just like to briefly go over what we're going to present tonight. We're going to go through just a very brief history of the park and the river itself, talk about a few of the proposed enhancements that we've developed, show some examples, discuss a little bit of what if we don't do anything and just move forward and keep things as it is. Next steps in the process, funding opportunities, and then just project contact. The main problem that we've identified is that South Platte River within the South Platte Park is no longer functioning as a natural system. There's a lot of outside influences that have impacted the river, and we'll go through a few of those. We'd like to present a few of the different enhancements that, in our approach that we're taking with this, to take a very natural approach to the ecosystem restoration. South Platte Park, the entire project area is highlighted here in orange. The park was founded in 1974 as a flood protection or a floodplain park. It's 878 acres, and this is actually the only significant unchannelized area of the South Platte River, or non-engineered, through the Denver metro area, so it provides some unique opportunities for enhancements. Total river through the park itself is approximately 2.4 miles. The dam, Chatfield Dam, which was built between 1967 and 1975 in response to the 1965 flood. It's a multi-purpose reservoir for water storage, recreation, and flood storage. Approximately a 3,000 square mile drainage basin that drains into the reservoir. The dam has had some significant effects on the river and how the river is actually functioning now. The peak annual flows have been greatly reduced with the placement of the dam, and that's the whole function of the dam itself. Sediment loading, the natural sediment process in the stream itself has been eliminated due to the dam, which also results in a channel now below the dam that's actually too wide for normal conditions and the flows that we're seeing at this point in time. That results also in insufficient depths for aquatic habitat during low flow conditions, so we're seeing a lot of effects of that very low flow periods of time. The channel's lost its natural features, including things like riffles and pools and different features like that that you would see in a more natural system.
Dave?
Yes.
A question along the way.
Sure.
When you talk about sediment load, not necessarily in the glossary yet, so when you say that the sediment load has been eliminated, what does that mean?
Maybe I'll let Troy address some of the sediment issues.
Yeah, so the sediment load is any natural stream channel will carry both water and it'll carry sediment. It's the sands and silts and other particles that would travel in the water. And by building a dam, what you do is you effectively make like a big bathtub. So any of the sediment that would have naturally come down through the drainage gets trapped at the reservoir. And so downstream of the reservoir, you have a system where the water doesn't have the amount of sediment that it would like to have. And it's sort of an odd concept, but water wants to have sediment. If it doesn't have sediment in it, it will erode the banks and try to change the shape of the stream.
So the river has a mind.
I'm sorry, the river, yeah.
The river has a mind.
Yes, and then that's the reason that after the dam was constructed, the river downcut and had to go back in and build all those grade control structures. So the river was trying to regain a sediment load by just deepening through that whole area.
Okay, good. Just kind of an overview of some of the historic conditions. This is a 1937 photo. You can see the pink line kind of outlines the channel form or the alignment of the channel at that point in time. And you can also take a note to the surrounding land use, which is mostly agricultural at this point in time. But you can see the natural meandering pattern in here. If you look at a comparison between the 1937 and 2010, you can see quite a bit of land use change. You can also see the blue line, which is the channel now, is a lot straighter. So some of the impacts of surrounding development, the gravel operations, and some just everything in general with the development, has caused this channel to straighten out. Over time, what we're seeing with the channel, like I just said, it was channelized. We're seeing a sinuosity, which is the meandering factor you would typically see in a channel. A higher number means it's more, you have more sinuosity. The original 1937 photo we were looking at, that had a sinuosity of about 1.4, and now the sinuosity that we're looking at today is 1.1, which is a 1 is straight. Like I said earlier, in discussion of the flows that we're seeing now are greatly reduced. Before the dam, we were seeing flows in the order of 4,000 CFS for an average high. Now you're seeing a typical high of about 650 CFS. So you have a channel that was originally formed for a very large flow that is now really only seeing smaller flows on a regular basis. And the result of all these different factors is that the river is no longer functioning as a natural system. The enhancement plan objectives, what we're taking is more of an ecological approach, referred to here as ecological enhancement. And that's the process of assisting or recovering an ecosystem that has been degraded, damaged, or destroyed. It's a little different than restoration, which would be turning it back to a completely natural form. Just a couple of the goals: reestablish the ecological integrity that was originally intended with the park, create a narrower, meandering, low-flow channel that's more informed with the flows that we see today, create more in-stream aquatic habitat with a variety of different features, such as riffles, pools, and glides, stabilize critical eroding banks in specific areas, and to improve the native riparian habitat through the park.
Dave, you're saying the pre-dam, it was 4,000 CFS going through, and now it's 650. Okay, given that there's nothing being taken out, at least along the part that represents the park, in fact, we're responsible for making sure that the same flow that comes in goes out. Where's the other water going?
I think you're seeing more of the peak flows. So when you had the original storm events that were coming down, or the spring runoffs, you'd see a higher peak in the springtime. Now that peak is being shaved off with the dam, so you're seeing a lot less.
So the 4,000
Spring flush.
CFS was only occurring at intermittent times that would correspond to the spring peak.
Yeah, what happens for the way channels are formed is with normal flows, you'll get a little bit of channel movement, but it's the really high peak flows that what give you the shape of a channel. And so by moving the flows from the spring peak and spreading those flows out over the other times of the year, you're really reducing that largest event that naturally forms a channel. And so it's that event, while the water is still there, it's just being released at different times. You're going from 4,000 to 650, which means you're going from a channel that should be, or was about 120 feet wide, and now should be 40 to 50 feet wide.
In case you didn't know, Troy's the engineer and I'm the ecologist, so.
I thought you were the pretty face.
That too. Okay, good. Just kind of an overview or schematic drawing of kind of what a natural system would be that we would typically expect to see in a situation such as South Platte versus what we're seeing. This top figure kind of shows what the goal is, what we're trying to reestablish. You can see there's a marker there that's a bank full. You have a channel that's has some shape to it, has a deeper thowag, which we call is the lower confined area, then exposed channel bars that flood and shift around a little bit, but actually confine that thowag, and then overbank terraces. So these are all the different things of a natural system that you would typically want to see, and which we will be recreating. If you look at the bottom, what we have is a very wide channel, very shallow, and very limited diversity throughout the bottom. So just kind of a comparison of what we would want in the top as a proposed condition versus what we actually have out there right now. The enhancement plan, the overall entire enhancement plan that we're proposing, I think you have reviewed, is about approximately 2 miles of low-flow channel improvements, and we'll show you what those look like. 11 separate riffle pool glide sequences. 4 of those will be modifying existing drop structures that are out there. There's about 3,700 linear feet of bank stabilization in 8 different locations, which only comprises 15% of all the banks through the area. And a construction of multiple cobble bars, which is associated with the low flow improvements.
Could I ask you a question there?
Yes.
When you talk about the second bullet, modifying the existing drops, are those the narrow parts of the river that are outlined by large rocks that identifies where the channel is pulled together to give some excitement as you're floating down the river?
The modification to the 4 drop structures, yes, those are actually some of the drops that are out there now.
And so you're going to replace those drops with riffles?
They'll be modified with riffles, correct.
What does it hurt to leave the drops there? The fish can still maneuver.
They're actually causing barriers in certain areas right now. The fish cannot move up and down through those structures during low flows. Higher flows, you can probably get some over there. The intent is to create more natural situations. A rock dam in a river system like this is not a natural situation at all. It's basically made as a grade control, and it's been modified for boating improvements. The riffles won't change the ability to boat through the system itself or the stretch.
won't change it, but it certainly removes the excitement.
Yeah.
Unless you're a fisherman.
Not gonna, yeah, we can debate. And we do have a map that shows which ones are proposed. There's actually, through the entire section, there's 10 boat structures, and only 4 of these are being modified out of the 10. And I can show you that if you'd like to jump to that now.
No, you'll get to it. I'll just wait.
I'm going to, maybe I've got a question, but go ahead and put your next slide up because it's a little, yeah, this is more pertinent. Go ahead and make your comments and then I'll ask the question.
Well, this is just schematic design right now of this is actually just the northern half, and then the next slide is the southern half of the project reach, but the light blue are the proposed, you can see the little light blue dots throughout the river corridor there. Those are where we're proposing the riffle pool sequences. The blue is actually, the light blue is actually the riffle. The green lines highlight some of the bank stabilization areas, so you can see just a schematic overview of this.
I guess I wanted to ask how, given the magnitude of this and given how much material you guys have to bring in to accomplish what you're doing, how are you going to actually physically move that quantity of material into this area? I mean, there's a lot of this, there's not a lot of overt easement to get in here. So from a construction project perspective, how are you going to do it?
Well, I don't know if you...
One of the things we've talked about and worked with urban drainage a bit on is exactly that question, and I think there's a couple of challenges that we'll face with the park itself and the park users to minimize the access points that equipment is going to come in, because there is going to have to be a fair number, large number of trucks that will have to come in, bring some of the larger rock material. And so it's something that we'll look at locations where you can minimize the travel distance and the number of times you actually have to access the stream. And then for the work itself, a majority of the work will be done sort of within the channel proper. It won't be done up on the banks, but we'd have to be diverting the river in different places, and so we're not having impacts to, minimizing impacts to water quality and working more in the dry. But a majority of this work will actually be from within the channel, and the bigger outside impact as far as easements, those types of things.
You're going to actually have to basically put backhoes or something into the, move the channel around, get backhoes in there and start moving this material and pull them out and move them somewhere else.
Exactly right. We have some photos later on showing some examples of other projects, but yes, the work will be done mostly from within the existing channel.
Okay, thanks.
Well, this one's different from what we have here, right?
It's the same features are in there. It might be a slightly different visual layout.
Move back a page.
I'm too far down?
You're
That's
one page
actually
too
the same
far.
one. You might be
sorry.
on the next page, which is the
Okay,
next slide
I
here.
jumped ahead, sorry. No, that's okay. I wanted you to point out whichever one's appropriate, if you could, where the drops are that are going to get converted to riffles.
There's a slide towards the end. If you want to hold on to that, we can
That
get to
has
that,
this
or I
kind
can
of-
jump to it. Yeah, it's got an
Oh, okay.
overview map of the park and the whole area with the actual each boat chute identified.
Okay, so I mean, it'd be like this, and you can say, oh,
Yep,
okay, thank you.
we can jump to it if you'd like to.
No,
get to
that's
that now.
okay. Thank you.
Great. Just some examples of the problems we're seeing out here. Here's an example of when we refer to the existing channels being overly wide and having any lack of aquatic features or in-stream features. You can see it's very monotypic, no relief, there's no variation in flow, it's just very uniform flow across the whole area. The solutions, and we'll get to some real-life examples of these next, is to create a narrower channel, which is depicted here as in a darker blue, and that's created by making flood terraces, or what we call point bars, where these get exposed under real low flows so that it actually forces the water into a lower channel or a smaller channel, and then during high flows, those bars would flood out, just like you'd see in a natural situation.
We do have some of those on the river now, right? Okay.
Yeah, there's some, they shift around, so you definitely do see them. These would be forming them a little more appropriately to maximize and optimize the river. This is accomplished getting back to some of the shaping and the construction efforts. The top graphic there, the schematic, you can see it's a very wide channel, very shallow flow during low flow conditions. The goal of the improvements would be to create a narrower channel, and you can see that on the right and the lower there, and then that concentrates the low flow, allowing for greater water depth and flow variety. Just a visual example, this is another project that was done with very similar conditions, and we'll get to actually a lot more detail of this later. But the photo on the left, you can see a very wide channel, very shallow, not a lot of habitat. You look at it on the right, the after, it's reshaping that channel, having more exposed gravel bars, cobble bars, and a more confined low flow channel. Just another example of creating when we talk about meandering within the channel and a narrower low flow channel, you can see the photo on the left is a very straight, very shallow section. Same reach on the right. After enhancement, you can see the exposed cobble bars and a more defined low flow channel. Limited in-stream habitat. Again, here you're seeing a very uniform stream. Excuse me. There's a little bit of a point bar developed there in the background, but you can see this is very limited aquatic in-stream habitat. The concepts would be, if you look at visualize this as the black lines being the existing channel, is create more of a meandering flow path throughout the existing channel, and then riffle pool sequences. Kind of an example of what we talk about when we're talking about riffles and pools and point bars. You can see the photo on the right depicts it probably the best. You can see the section there where it's a little more white water in the middle of the photo. That's what we talk about with a riffle. So it's not a vertical drop. It's a long, low gradient, shallower riffle that dumps into a pool, which is seen right there. And then this is all constructed in a channel, and the point bars over there on the right, you can see that's where we get the, that's how you actually narrow the channel, and then allows it to flood during higher flows.
In terms of that, who or what would be able to go down that? Would tubes or canoes or kayaks or?
Pretty much everything you're seeing now. I mean, you're going to be in the same situations. You're going to have the same flows. This isn't going to change the flows, but it'll create, under low flow conditions, it'll create a deeper channel. So you'll have deeper water than you would now under low flow conditions.
So there'd just be a little challenge to maneuver your way through that.
No, I think
I mean, in a good way.
I don't know if it would be a challenge. I mean, it depends if you're in an inner tube, I guess, or
Well,
not.
then,
but-
I mean, it doesn't look like you would just go straight through that.
Correct. It's not a
Yeah. I mean, so there'd be a
gentle flow.
little maneuvering.
I think one thing from a boating standpoint, that what you find is that converting a couple of the drops to riffles, at those specific drops, you probably will reduce sort of the wow factor just from a boating standpoint. But by narrowing the channel down, you also, I think the flip side is you'll extend the time that people in different crafts can actually use the water that way, because instead of having a flow that spreads out 120 feet wide and might be a few inches deep, now when the flows recede, when you have lower flows, the water is going to be deeper. So I think that certainly while there is a reduction in the drop or the wow factor in those four areas that would be converted, the whole thing, I think, would have some flip side benefit from a boating standpoint as well.
If I can.
Hold on a second, Phil. I just want to mention that if South Suburban, if you have any questions, just feel free to raise your hand and I'll recognize you. Go ahead, Phil.
Here's what is happening in my mind, so I'll explain it from a layperson's view, and you can tell me I'm all wet, pun intended.
No pun intended.
What happens is in creating the narrower channel within the wider channel, and seeing that what happens is yes, it's eventually covering the same distance, but the water is actually having to go a little faster because it's going side to side. And as it's going, it's got to go through that distance, but it's going to actually be traveling at a little bit faster pace. And so, as I'm understanding the riffle, it takes the one big drop and it makes it a little bit longer but faster path. And when I say faster, it's not water from one end to the other. It's going from one end to the other in the same, but it has to cover more distance, so it has to travel quicker. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's a good explanation of it.
We can trade.
Okay?
Go ahead.
Just some other examples, some of the bank erosion problems that we're seeing out there with significant bank sloughing. These are some visual examples, which is also causing problems with loss of riparian habitat. Some more examples. Some of the solutions, we have a variety of different bank stabilization techniques that we'd like to implement, and they are taking more of a natural approach. So it's not just hard armoring of the banks, it's actually incorporating vegetation, native vegetation that you would see. This is just one of the examples of creating more of a riparian area by taking the vertical bank and laying it back and still armoring the toe so that it is stable, but then also incorporating native vegetation. Another solution that we've discussed with or developed with this as part of some of the other banks in area, that the vertical component of the stream bank was seen as a benefit to certain wildlife and birds and mammals and things of that nature. So this one's actually maintaining an upper cut bank but then stabilizing the toe. So we're taking that into consideration from an ecological standpoint also.
I, as long as a bunch of other people sitting up here, have walked along that river an awful lot. And if you look at your this slide and then your following slide, which is the solution, as I understand it, to what you're doing to the stabilization, you are potentially removing some fairly large trees that are growing right close to the banks. Trees are very valuable in this community and in this climate. Do we have an idea of how many of those would be removing?
The intent is not to take any new trees out. I mean, there may be a few here and there, but the goal is in areas similar to with this stabilization technique, and then there's another one that we don't have a visual for it, that those are actually maintaining and they're being developed to actually maintain the existing cottonwoods and trees that are out there. So the only place where we're talking about laying slopes back in a fashion such as this is where we have some of those other pictures where there is no vegetation up top. So
Okay.
in areas where we are trying to maintain those trees, the goal is to maintain the trees. A few of them, because they're hanging out or not completely anchored in there, may have to come out. We haven't done a full inventory, but the intent is to maintain all the trees as possible.
Some of the trees right now are already being undercut.
Some of them are falling in. So the intent is to save what we can and move on and stabilize it from further loss.
Sue?
I have a question about the actually the word is failing me right now, but where you're making the stream meander, the banks, is that going to be dredged out and then put there? So is it going to be the rock that's normally there, or, this is what I'm a little fearful of, is it going to be that really ugly gray granitic riprap that you see that is so, I mean, when you see it, you know that it's foreign, it's been brought in, it's industrial strength kind of stuff, and to me, it looks very fake. So are those banks going to be more the dredged material that would be there
When we're talking about
anyway?
the channel shaping, there will be some other material that's brought in as a foundation, some larger riprap type structure, but that'll be covered and buried and mixed with the native material out there. So the intent is that we will have that native cover on top.
And not
With the cobble
much visibility. You know what I'm talking about. It's that, I don't know where that stuff comes from, but you see it all over in construction projects, and it's the granitic gray granite stuff. Yeah, in a wire cage, not any of that.
That's not the intent.
Visible.
I mean, there may be some areas where you will see pieces of it, but the intent is that it's actually covered and intermixed with native material.
But we will be having to use some of that material for the strength properties, but then bury that below so that what you're seeing in the finished product is the more native material.
I have a bunch of questions, but maybe the next one would be, at some point, the river leaves the park, and so then it's back in that old too-wide channel with too little water. How is doing this going to affect the area downstream?
I'm going to try.
Sure. It's one of those, it's a really good question, something you face anytime we do stream restoration, is that you're never going to be able to go from the beginning to the full length of the channel. And so what we try to do is make sure that the types of improvements are things that aren't maybe completely similar, but are at least compatible with what's going on downstream. And I think the biggest thing we'll have to look at is that where this project would end, as it translates into that next section, we wouldn't have any erosion right at that spot. It happens that in this case, the project would end at Reynolds Landing. At that location, there's a very large existing grouted concrete structure. And so because of that, I think we're a little bit lucky that we're not in a situation where we'd be causing some downstream erosion. I think you will see that the area that is reshaped is going to be more efficient and more imbalanced with a sediment standpoint, and potentially for the first couple of years of flows, there might be some minor adjustments immediately downstream of Reynolds Landing as the sediment balance gets moved, but there won't be anything so drastic that it's completely out of place with what's happening downstream.
Okay.
Could you back up one? So with this and then the next slide both, what kind of,
Peggy?
what kind of surge? Well, if we have bad storms, bad runoffs, whatever, I mean, I know the dam controls what it does, but that's not the same as what comes in from either side. So when you get the water coming in there, isn't that going to, based on what you've got here, isn't that going to undercut that bank?
The intent with this is that it will not. The toe here will be strong enough and designed appropriately that it can handle the floods. And then when it overtops that, the intent is that it'll still create a little bit of erosion and maintain that vertical cut bank. In this situation, that's what we actually want to maintain, that cut bank. The intent is that the toe will be strong enough to hold the upper part of the bank up.
Okay, and the same then in the next one?
And the next one is the same thing, and these may be a little deceiving with bank heights and things like that, just because they're sketches. But with the toe there, the rock part, that would be armored and hold the slope together. And then we'd maintain or reestablish vegetation up those banks at a more gentle slope that can handle the higher flows.
Okay, so like, how big a flow, what kind of catastrophic level, catastrophic's a bad word, but what kind of severity could it handle?
What we're looking at as we lay things out, and right now the design is kind of a preliminary design, so there'll be some final tweaking if this moves forward and each area would be get ready for construction. But the way the design is laid out is the smaller channel, sort of that 40 to 50 foot area where we said most of the flows are going to be, that can contain up to roughly 650 cubic feet per second, which is the amount of flow you're seeing about once every year. And so things like the bank stabilization on these graphics, that the whole bank would be stabilized up to that peak flow. In a bigger event, and Chatfield can release up to 5,000 CFS, that will go up and above. And I think in some of the vertical banks, certainly there would be some erosion, but the toes, the rock that's going in, sort of the buried riprap that we talked about, the material that goes to make the riffles are all going to be sized so that they'll be stable up to that maximum flow of 5,000. And that's the way the numbers will run in the preliminary modeling.
And that's then about a high for given years, is what you're saying?
High for a given year is about 650, and the high, the most that the Chatfield can physically release is about 5,000. So both of those are factored into the design. The 650 is what gives you the shape of that smaller channel, and then everything else it's designed for that 650, plus it's designed so that everything doesn't wash downstream if you get, up to that 5,000.
So my brain's still trying to wrap around that. I mean, like if you have a 50-year flood or a 75-year flood or whatever.
Yep, that's, all the structural components are sized to be stable under those higher flows.
Thank you.
Pam?
I understand that the Army Corps is considering increasing the capacity of the reservoir. Will that allow them to increase what they can release, or is that 5,000 CFS etched in stone?
I may not be fully knowledgeable enough to answer, but my understanding of what they're looking at with the reallocation is not at all changing those peak flows, but what they're doing is redistributing the way flows are sent at different times, but nothing through here, or the 5,000 CFS capacity is nothing that they would be changing with reallocation. And so the project was set up with some uncertainty, not exactly knowing what that reallocation may mean, but it sounds like it may be changing the timing of the water once again to try to have some more of those low flows, but not boosting the peak flow. So it really should not affect the higher flows that we're designed for.
Just piggybacking on that, will the flows be lower than 650 cubic feet per second then, in order to fill it to what, 10 feet above what it is now, or 20 feet, whatever?
Yeah, and I believe since this is just all downstream, I think it really won't have an effect on their peak releases. But again, I may be not quite right on my answer here, but the 650 is a good number, but it's those lower flows. And now there's times that there are 10 CFS or 5 CFS, and so it's more those flows that would be moderated by the reallocation versus the higher flows.
Bill?
The river meanders still, and it changes some of its path. With the enhancement that's proposed, will that set the river more than it is now, or will it still allow some of its meandering?
The intent is to do some of both by having some of the larger material in and buried to force the river to basically narrow down and have a meander, but yet nothing is going to be done. There's no intent to grout anything in place that says this is where everything shall be. But the rocks that are underneath are intended to be large enough so that the general meander pattern would remain the same. And it wouldn't, one year at an area, the river wouldn't be on the right side, then the next year would be on the left. So it would, in some ways, lock that meander in a little bit, but there still would be some, the depths of channel, the width won't be 40 foot consistently everywhere. There'd be some amount of maneuver or changing from year to year, but the general shape would be roughly the same.
Go ahead.
Keep going? Okay. Just some visuals here of channel, of all the components that we were talking about, creating of point bars, pools, just kind of visual schematic of how it all pulled together. Another example project that we can show you that was in different environment but very similar circumstances is the Blue River below Dillon Dam in Silverthorne. You can just see here I-70 cuts right through the middle, and this is the section to the right above I-70, right below the dam to basically I-70. Very similar conditions to what we're seeing here on the South Platte. Large dam, extended periods of drastic low flow, peak flows were highly reduced, the channel was too wide for the current low flows. It's very similar. We had sections of the Blue River that were upwards of 120 feet wide, and we were looking to reestablish it for a channel that was more on the order of about 20 to 40 feet wide, which is very similar to what we're seeing here. The goals were to create a stable channel, reestablish natural channel shape for the current flows, introduce or reestablish natural riffle pool sequences, and improve aquatic habitat. There, the focus definitely was more on the aquatic habitat and reestablishing that for resident trout species. Just some visual examples of before and after when we talk about creating meanders and the point bars in the different riffle pools. The one on the left is a before shot where you can see it's a very wide, straight channel. An after shot on the right shows you with the red line in the center there, kind of depicts how you reestablish that meandering pattern. So these are the same kind of conditions and features that we're proposing as part of this enhancement plan. Again, another visual. The one on the left shows a very straight section, very wide, very shallow. And on the right is an after shot, reestablishing that sinuosity, the meandering pattern within the straight channel itself. And again, this is looking basically off I-70 up the stream towards Dillon Dam. You can just see photo on the left, very wide, very shallow. You can see the guys walking across there, it's ankle deep. And then on the right, you can actually see how we introduce. You can see some riffles in there, or the kind of the whitish areas, and then deeper pools and reestablishing that meander pattern in there. So very similar situation.
And the photo that you've got there on the right shows the rocks in the middle of the river. I'm assuming that helps create pools and creates ripples. I guess I'm at the point where I would not want to see interference with the ability to boat or tube down the river when you get through with this. With large rocks that are too close together, you can't get between with a raft, for example.
And what we're proposing for this project would not have large boulders in that sense. Everything would be pretty much buried below the surface. It would just create different angles and steepness. In a riffle, you'd have a very steeper section, or a more steeper section, and it would actually be what we call a pool and glide section, which is a very flat section. All that is done below the surface, so it's recontouring below the actual channel bottom. You would not have a lot of features sticking up, large boulders, or like you have now with the boat chutes. There's very large structures, and they had to be modified or created so that there was actually a chute that a watercraft could get through. Okay. If nothing's done right now, what happens to this section of the river? It'll probably, our predictions are it'll continue to function the way it is, a very low aquatic habitat. It's in balance with what you'd see in a natural ecosystem. Would it get a whole lot worse? It's hard to predict. It's kind of hit a state now where it's degraded from its natural condition, but it's not going to get any better, and it probably won't heal itself at this point in time. The river channel will now fully function and achieve a maximum ecosystem potential. Next steps, we've gone through quite a process. No, go ahead. Uh-huh. The intent from permanency is that the channel, the way it's proposed, the enhancement plan, it'll function for the flows that we're predicting to see. I don't think there's any long-term solution. Is it the best solution? Going back to full restoration would be the ultimate solution, which would be removal of the dam and removal of everything along the corridor there, but I don't think that's realistic of what we have. So the components that we're proposing now are the best for what condition we have now. It's the best for what you can do. It's not going anywhere. I don't think you're going to see it leaving the channel. When we talk about creating the low flow channel and things of that nature, they're intended to be permanent. It's intended to stay within that low flow channel, and that's the way it's designed and engineered and modeled. Are we going to see it jump out of the channel and create an entirely new channel, like when we saw from the 1937 to the 2010? I mean, that channel's been pretty much set in stone, pretty much the wide part of the channel. So I don't think you're going to see that moving anywhere either.
I think there's a couple of things specifically that will prevent those types of movements. One, the drop structures that are out there, which are grouted concrete structures that go all the way bank to bank and go back into the banks as well. I mean, those are very significant structures, and none of that will be removed, but these riffles would be built on top of the portion of those. So that's one piece that is going to be very structural in this design that will prevent sort of I think what your question is do we build this and 3 years from now, does it all wash away? But we're building sort of on that backbone, and then in addition to that, we're really supplementing that structural component with, when we talk about these bars and the question of if the riprap, there will be riprap, it will be buried, and that will be the thing that provides the foundation for that channel's shape. So, and in the detailed design, I think different sections of this will look a little bit different. There'll be slightly different sized rock that's required depending upon the slopes, those types of things. But the intent of this is to build something that at key points locks the channel in to a more natural form, and at less key points allows some amount of more natural variation and migration of the channel.
That's the mental dichotomy, which is locking in natural is the oxymoron. So, and I don't know, Charlie, if you were going to have Laura talk a little bit about the maintenance down in urban drainage commitment.
Phil, let's take, Katie, you have a question?
I do. I find, because I'm fairly familiar with the Dillon Dam area, and I was questioning, granted, this is at altitude and it's different than what we are. When we say that we see the before and after, can you tell me a timeline and these pictures, as well as what kind of a timeline would be for us down here? Because I know every time you do something, it looks sort of scarred and a little bit rough and raw. How long will it take? I mean, we see Cooley Lake and we see the great things that happen there. So I know no one has patience. Me too. So what is sort of the timeline on these photos, and what would you suggest or predict for us?
This project was completed in 2003. It was
Yes, I
a
got
little
that.
less than a mile. So this photo, I'm sorry, the photo here, I mean, just for timeline sequence, this was actually in the spring of 2003 to the left, and the photo to the right is actually probably right after construction, which would have been probably, if that was in March of 2003, the photo on the right would be late summer
So
of
less than a
2003.
year.
So that's less than a year. And this construction project was a little smaller, a little easier situation. It was probably 4 weeks.
From the question of scarring, I think this was, I think the right photo was in August, and we completed the project probably 2 weeks before that photo was taken.
Wow.
The thing that is nice, it is nice to have one bigger flow after a project's done, because there's always going to be some of the things that are left too engineered, edges that are too perfectly rounded. And so I think while it will look very good immediately after you get that first higher flow, I think it will even improve.
What are you saying the timeline will be for this then? This was a mile and several months. How long will?
And it really depends. I mean, right now, we're looking at a phased approach, so it's basically depending on funding. We could do it all at once, but it's probably not going to be realistic, and we could go as fast as we possibly can. These people think that these projects usually take extensive, long periods, several years to do. Once you get going, the construction is actually relatively quick, but this is a multi-phased project. It is 2 miles, so it really depends on how the phasing goes. Right now, we're looking at implementing potentially a first phase, which is just basically one riffle and some other bank work and some wetland work. That would kind of be the first phase. It would be a relatively quick project.
Like months?
Months. And I think the scarring, the most visual thing you typically see with this is entry points and haul roads and revegetating those and reestablishing vegetation if we're reestablishing riparian areas and things of that nature. You know, those trees and grasses take a couple years to revegetate. You know, we usually say about 3 years until something's established. Same as you're planting trees or anything of that nature.
In terms of the demo projects working?
I don't know if we've established any specific criteria. I mean, I think you'll know pretty quick if things are not working correctly or not, especially after you get the first big flow. It's usually the most critical period. I don't think we've established any timeline of specific evaluation. Whenever you do these projects, you're held to standards. The Army Corps looks at things. You got to monitor them for a period of 3 to 4 years typically. So you have at least that set in that kind of timeline. I don't think there's been any trigger set right now that we're going to wait, 1 month or 5 years to see if something's holding to go to the next phase.
We do, and one other thing with that is, I guess in Colorado, we've completed about 30 of these types of projects, and we have had to come back in and do some maintenance on vegetation. And I think it's one of the toughest things where you would have weeds that would come in, you'd have to irrigate the vegetation. We've had a couple of banks where a bank that was stabilized ended up washing back out, but we've never had these in-stream sequences wash out. And I think this last year was one of our greatest tests. The Blue River and Silverthorne had flows higher than it's had in I believe, 20 years. We've done 2 major projects on the Eagle River and Minturn, and not a single one of those needed any work. They maintain all their shape and functionality. There's a little bit of shifting the channel, and it looks a little bit different, but the width of the channel, having the riffles and pools, they've all maintained, and so that was a really good test of some of these, and so I guess we've had projects now that are in their 10th year with some pretty significant flows.
Bruce?
My question is, we have thousands of people that go up and down that corridor along the Pot River, and this is an extremely high visibility area because of the access and just the nature of it. For those folks that really have an ownership and a tremendous feeling of love for that river, what are they going to see happening over this period of time? Are they going to see bulldozers in the river? Are they going to see, large rock trucks running things up and down? And so could you describe that a little bit for us so the shock is not involved? And then the other is, this is an opportunity to educate then those thousands of people that what is happening is a good thing. And probably it doesn't look like that to them initially if all they see is bulldozers. So how can we go down a path here where we educate the thousands of people that believe in this area that this is a good thing?
Public education is definitely key for any of these kind of public projects, and we've done quite a few of these. There's many opportunities to educate people. We do signs sometimes, short little video clips, pamphlets that can be handed out to talk about the problems that we've identified that's similar to what we're trying to here, and what the long-term goals are, and the benefits to not only the public, but also the ecosystems. So there's a lot of public involvement that can, public outreach and public involvement to kind of educate the people on that. I guess from a standpoint of what do you see, it is a construction project, and yes, you will see heavy equipment in the river moving around, and there is a short-term disturbance period. It's just a fact of stream restoration or any construction project. So there is that short-term factor there that you will have. And I think the education and letting people know what's going on is definitely a key as compared to someone just showing up and saying, oh my gosh, there's bulldozers in the river. So it is a component there where you got to have some public education and notification.
Has there been any analysis of an initial threat to wildlife as this thing is occurring and what that wildlife would be, and then what a recovery period would be?
What we've seen in the past from other projects is there is some minor disturbance locally when you have construction, just like you would with any construction project. This is not something where it's necessarily a detriment where you're killing wildlife or anything like that, because it's somewhat subtle. You see local disturbances. I mean, the majority of the mammals and things that you're seeing move through there are adapted to high intensity. A lot of people, cars, bridges, I mean, they're used to the lights and stuff like that. So I don't think you're going to see any massive long-term displacement. You see very short-term avoidance around a specific construction project area. If we're building one riffle, you're talking about a 100-foot section that may be disturbed in that immediate area is where you would see that, that temporary displacement. But what we see is even with the aquatics in stream, things are moving right back into the places as soon as you get out of there. Wildlife, you probably will have some short-term displacement, but you'll see the different animals and things come back pretty quickly.
Thank you.
Jim?
I believe you said that you'd be showing us where the 4 drop structures would be converted to riffles, and I don't remember seeing that.
We're not done, but we can keep going. Those are some examples. We can go through this. The process, we can talk about that. Maybe we'll just skip ahead to the map. All right, hopefully everybody can see this. So this is a map which is the park and slightly outside of the park, looking north. What I have is, this is the actual South Suburban map, and this shows the placements of the boat chutes. All of them are little blue dots inside the stream channel itself. There's actually 10 boat structures identified down through there. The ones in red are the ones that we're proposing to alter, and then the blue ones will be maintained. And for some reason, I might have one extra one on there, so.
Yeah, I believe we've got an error on one right there. So we have four of those sites will be modified. At the far upstream end, the structure will be maintained. Structure is maintained here at Mineral Avenue. Structure is maintained here at Reynolds Landing. And we have one extra one shown, and we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 riffle, 4 that would be converted to riffles.
And which one of those is not? You've got 5 identified, and I'm unclear which one is not.
I'm trying to remember if it's this one or this one. We have an extra one shown.
Do we have that map?
We do not.
No.
This is something we pulled up as in a response to a question.
It'd be good to note too that, well, at least the 2 that we have shown in the middle there and the one at Red Tail Lake, those are very minor structures now. Those are not what you would typically see as the big drop structures. The one I think at Mineral and then at C470, those are the traditional big 3-foot vertical drops, where the other ones are very, very small little drops.
As well as those by Reynolds Landing are very traditional drops, too.
Very large drops, correct. So the 2 in the middle there, and then the 2 at Red Tail Lake, those are more smaller, just small rock weirs, basically, and not big drops.
Cool. When was the boat chutes added that are there now? And what has been the history with those things? How are they holding up the river?
I don't know, Laura, if that's something you can help us with.
Okay.
It was, yeah. And the reason that they went in.
Could you repeat what you said so the folks?
Sorry, I believe it was the early 90s. The reason that structures went in there was a response to, after the dam was built, the river started just down cutting because it was trying to gain its sediment load. And so in response to that, the Corps put in drop structures that would stop any more vertical down cutting. And so they put those in so that all the energy of the river happened at a couple places, and it was nice and flat. You'd have no erosion until the next drop structure. And those original structures were then converted to the boating structures, something like circa 90s. And I believe that most of them are functioning, as intended. Certainly as far as down cutting of the river, they have taken care of that problem. The river is no longer going vertical, so they certainly have accomplished that goal. And I think from a recreation standpoint, they do provide a window of opportunity for recreation during high flows and spring releases.
Thank you.
Jim?
Having had to deal with the Corps once before with the similar type of proposal about keeping water flowing from bank to bank, have you had conversations with the Corps, and what's their reaction?
To date, we've had some very general conversations with the Army Corps and also Division of Wildlife. I think we've seen support through the design. They'll definitely have more input as we move forward with the design plans, if we do. But at this point, everyone's been positive with the approach.
John?
As a follow-up to that, how long do you expect to take to get Corps approval?
Well, I think we have one issue with the 404, which is just the placement of fill as part of stream restoration. That time period, depending on the magnitude of the project, probably a year-ish, depending on the magnitude of the project. There's different components and different permits you can use, but you're looking anywhere 3 months to a year to get probably approval. And not for the priority project if you're looking at doing pieces or just bank stabilization or phasing. It depends how we approach the permitting scenario. It could be as quick as 45 days.
I have a quick question on river quality. As you're doing the construction and there's a lot of disruption, a lot of things going on, what does that do to the river quality? We have a sewer treatment facility just downstream, and we have, we're judged and regulated on the quality of the river past that. Are you guys going to have any effect on that? Is that something we need to know about, or can we mitigate that before it happens, or?
One of the things that is different with this project than some of the others is because it's in such a high-profile area with so many users, and because of those types of demands in talking with urban drainage, right now the thought is that the work would try to be done in the dry, and what that would mean is we would be trying to sort of cofferdam or block off portions of the river where we're working to minimize the biggest impact, which is turbidity. And so we've worked above water treatment intakes before, and when we've done that, we've worked with the operator of those intakes so that they know when we're in the river, and because there is definitely a potential for increased turbidity during those times. And so I think it's something, along with the public outreach and making citizens aware, also thinking of other water users to make sure that this is a coordinated effort with those types of thoughts in mind.
Are there any more questions? Do you guys have anything else? Okay. Charlie? Okay. So we will move to the public hearing. I have 3 names on the roster, and they would all like to speak. First one, Jim Rasmussen. Please come down and state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
My name is Jim Rasmussen. I live at 7721 South Harrison Circle in Centennial, part of South Platte Parks and Recreation.
I'm sorry, could you speak right into the mic? I
Sure.
can barely hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see, I guess I really have one primary point is that we have built in South Platte Park a handicapped fishing platform that's in serious need of a place to fish in front of it. It needs a pool, it needs something, and part of this project is certainly is that. Right now, you look at the flow out there is about like this, there should be some kind of a pool. This plan whereby they create a minimum flow channel would alleviate that situation. Also, I've noticed on their drawings that a pool is planned for that area. Additionally, of course, as a fisherman, I support it's called here, provide in-stream aquatic habitat that translates directly into to more fishing, especially more fishing area in the form of riffles and pools. I look forward to fishing there in the future, and I think there's some other individuals here that have some fishing experiences to relate on this point.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
John Aaron?
A-A-R-O-N.
Aaron. Okay. Address and,
Hi, my name is John Aaron. I live at 9283 South Deer Creek Canyon Road. For those of you who don't know where that's at, it is Littleton postal address, however. It's on the very, very top of Deer Creek Canyon. I was born in Nebraska on the South Platte River. I went to the University of Nebraska. Don't hold that against me. She used to shoot ducks at Platts Mouth, Nebraska. Platts Mouth. That's the beginning. And I fished all over the watershed and so forth. This is like my home stream. And you guys are sitting on a thing that, what I do during the daytime, I work for the state, I won't say what, but I authorize a lot of money for restoration projects. These guys need me as their promo guy. They've worked for me several times and done some wonderful, wonderful work. But I want to introduce you to a friend of mine, this dude. His name is Hank. Hank is a 27-inch rainbow trout that lives about 300 yards downstream of C-470. He's 27 inches long and he weighs over 9.5 pounds. He's been caught over 6 times. This is what we love to do, is fly fish. Hank was caught March of last year. And you can see he's a big, healthy thing. Now, he's got a lot more brethren sitting in there, too. What that tells us, me as fly fishermen, is that this river has the capability and the holding capacity to be unbelievable. And we've waited for years for this thing. And we know it has it in itself. It just needs a little bit of help. And I bring up the word fly fishing in particular, because Minturn, the river's been completely changed over up there. They now have restaurants and so forth that like fly fishermen to show up to town to go fishing. Golden has a beautiful area that's been reconstructed on Clear Creek. And there's 3 restaurants that are right along the creek up there. Salida, needless to say, that town loves fly fishermen. It's not the sport that one thinks it is. And my point is, this is right in town. Now, one of my cohorts, you speaking? All right. Todd's speaking, but I'm going to break the ice on this thing. We're also not just working on this 2 miles of river that we love, but there's another whole effort when you mention downstream. We would like to rebuild the entire South Platte River all the way through Denver. Everybody goes, oh my goodness, what a thing. Well, it's happening. It's happening. Because before I left to work tonight, I was working on a contract that's going to award the first bunch of money to Greenway Foundation for peace from Dartmouth down to Mississippi. So it's coming. Now, if you guys do this project and we get Denver Rec do their little project down below, then we're going to knock on Inglewood's door. Get it all the way through town. Make San Antonio so jealous. Because they got frog water and we have a river. We just need to help it. And by the way, I also belong to Cutthroat Chapter Trout Unlimited. That's 1,400 members in Littleton and Centennial, and so forth. So there's a lot of us. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Todd Fair?
Good evening, my name is Todd Fair. My address is 5668 South Geneva Street, Greenwood Village, Colorado. I'm the president of Denver Trout Unlimited. I want to thank the City Council and the board tonight for asking a number of thoughtful questions. This is something new for the City of Littleton and the South Platte River, and I think many of the questions are good questions. I think this is a thoughtful approach, and although I was not here in 1990, I think this is a more thoughtful approach. And there's been more questions that have been asked to ensure that it's good for the river, to ensure that it's good for the park. I'm not sure how many of those questions were asked over all of the years, but I think it's appropriate. I would also ask that, urban drainage has been involved in other projects that I've been involved with in the city itself, where we did techniques that were natural techniques. Some good examples of that are Cottonwood Creek that flows into Cherry Creek Reservoir, and there's a walkway along there. If any of you have been out to there, you notice that there's some very fantastic work there. And this work is similar in nature, but it's the first time that we're doing it on a larger river here in Denver, Colorado with urban drainage. And I think that this is very likely to be one of the first steps in the direction of using this kind of technique in place of the traditional grade control techniques and trapezoidal channels that have been used. And I think what will develop from that is a better, I don't want to use the word ecosystem, it's such a platitude, but a better system where fish can coexist in bigger and better natures. People have better access, as you see in some of the pictures. Some of these point bars that are created are places where people are going to come down to the water's edge and react to the water. And much of what we have now, we have areas where it's highly vegetated and it's hard to actually get down there and interact with the water. So I think that this is a very positive project, and I would like to ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, I need a motion.
Wait a minute. Would you like to ask if other people would?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, if there's anybody in the audience who would like to come down and make a comment, even though you didn't sign up, you're more than welcome to at this point. John?
I'd like to ask Melissa and Scott if they have anything to add, if they have any comments on this project. Are we going in the right direction?
Can we do it? Okay.
Good evening, I'm Melissa Reese Thacker, Senior Park Planner with South Suburban Parks and Recreation. Scott Latona and I represent two different viewpoints within South Suburban. I look at the project specifically from a planning standpoint, from the public process through the planning stages. Are we following the right tracks? Are we taking things in the right direction? Scott Latona is the park supervisor, and he's much more knowledgeable about the actual issues within the park. So from the standpoint of planning, yes, I feel like we've followed the public process. We've hired a very qualified engineer to prepare this plan for us. They have a shown record of being able to do enhancements on rivers that are no longer in their natural state. This has been a team process. We've also included the Colorado Water Conservation Board, the DOW, the Army Corps of Engineers, excuse me, the South Metro Land Conservancy, the Audubon Society. They've all been stakeholders in this process. They've all received a copy of the draft plan and were asked to provide comments on the project. To date, we haven't received any comments from them, but they've been very knowledgeable in the process that we're taking and the objectives of this project.
Thank you, Melissa.
Somebody's keys?
Those are ours. Fine.
And as Melissa said, I'm Scott Latona, the supervisor of South Platte Park. And the look I've seen on many of your faces a couple times this evening and the questions I've heard are very familiar, because when I first approached the project, I had a high degree of skepticism and a lot of questions about it. And I think last week at the study session, Charlie expressed the same thing. This is a very big, complex process, a lot of things that are kind of outside of our normal areas of expertise. So trying to wrap our brains around something that lasts for many, many years and has all these different components, it's a challenging project, but the more that I've sat with it and looked through it, the more it seems to make sense. There definitely will be impacts, and at our public hearing, Troy had said this is a rather heavy-handed approach to put the river into the state that it should be in. But the park, probably the best lesson that I've had in the 13 years I've been at South Platte Park is that it is a very resilient place. Within the last 5 years, we had 2.5 miles of the park disturbed as a sewer line was put in. And when you go back to those areas today, the only evidence is the sewer hole covers there. Everything else is pretty well restored. We've had water lines cut across the park, all kinds of different changes. So, you know, I'm not real eager to have to go in and work on more weed control and more restoration. It'd be nice to see the park just kind of exist in its state, but I think we want to have a good, stable state for it to exist in. So it's a really interesting concept. I've really enjoyed learning about it, and I don't know if you have any more specific, actually, I did have a couple of, my understanding is the loss of the trees. After the high waters this year, we had a couple of hazard trees down. Littleton Fire actually had to come out and remove some. And after that, Urban Drainage had contractors come out and take out another 6 or 7 trees that were in threat of falling down. The hope of this project is to stabilize those areas so the existing trees can remain. And then impacts on wildlife, probably the biggest one that I've been watching, well, the wildlife on the cut banks, and that was a question I brought up to ERC early on, and they have changed the designs to allow some of those cut bank areas, those animals that nest in the vertical banks, to remain. But then also winter waterfowl. This project would have to happen during low season times, and that's one of the big draws of South Platte Park is waterfowl coming to spend the winter here. So that construction project would definitely disturb those species. But again, they're very resilient. They will adapt, and they will eventually find their new places in the new system. I think those were the points that I had written down, if there's other questions.
Questions? Bruce?
Yeah, Scott, the gentleman mentioned the handicap fishing pier, and I think it's in the proximity of Carson. I think it's south of the Nature Center, if I believe is the one that you put in not too long ago. Looking at this map, it looks to me as if they're going to have one of these rifles and pools sort of in that vicinity. Is that the expectation, to answer his question, that there'll be a pool there that would be accessible as far as folks for handicap developmental disabilities use?
Right. The original intent of those platforms was a river access point where people could get close to the water and experience it, but also to be able to fish those areas. And the original intent was to have the low flows come in front of those areas and have a fishable pool nearby. That's where the initial funding for these projects came from, and we were unable to do just that small piece of it. The agencies that would be overseeing all of the permitting and all of that wanted to see a comprehensive plan for the entire river and not just manipulating little bits of it.
But the expectation of the plan is to accommodate that area with one of the pools?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
Anybody else? Bruce?
Scott, one of the things that you do really well is educate the public. I just, again, want to emphasize this is an opportunity to tell the folks what's going on, because as you said, it seems rather heavy-handed, and I think it's really going to be essential.
Yeah, I would definitely see having a fair amount of education materials in the Nature Center itself, as well as signs out on site to help explain, because we will definitely get the questions.
Phil?
An opportunity to post on Facebook progress being made, too.
Of course.
So, you know, and maybe even links to some videos that folks will have. And just to help folks, I think we talked about, did we have the map where Dave and Troy were talking about the locations? If you go to the draft report on page 9, the bound one, it has the map in there. It doesn't have the red circles around it, but it shows the various different ramps that are in existence right now. So if you can remember where the red circles were, that was there. And it's not as much a question for Scott, but since our urban drainage is one of the major funders of the project, we may want to give Laura an opportunity to comment as well.
And I was just going to make one comment. I think there were 5 boat chutes circled on there. The northernmost one is basically a signal boulder. There's really no remaining drop to that area. So from south to north, kind of in the wee factor, there's maybe 2 chutes that are a pretty decent wee to them, but nothing like the mineral boat chute or the C470s. The recreational impact of the chutes that would be converted is fairly low. They're the very minimal riffle chutes that are out there now.
Scott, I have a question, and I don't know if that you're we had a lot of conversation about the problem with the silt building up at Red Tail. And so is the first phase of this project would help with that? Are we still planning to have an entry clear that open so that there's a better access?
Part of the analysis of this project kind of showed that having a separate entry from the river would not be a good idea. That would actually fill in the pond more and be harder to maintain in the long term. But one of the initial projects would be to enhance that connection between the two so that the fish could move into the lake during low flow seasons or high heat seasons and have some refuge there. And, you know, maintaining a connection but not having the river flow into and out of the lake.
Okay. Do you want to come on down and?
I'm Laura Kreger with the Urban Drainage and Flood Control District, and I'm the Assistant Manager of the Design, Construction, and Maintenance Program. I know that's quite a mouthful. But part of the things I am responsible for is the South Platte River. And as Charlie said when he first introduced this project, this is definitely a team effort. And you are really loaded with a fabulous team. So I really commend Cecily Moy, who started this venture with us. And her vision, I think, is really coming into play. One of the things you had talked about, is this the right thing? And I definitely believe this is the right time and the right thing to be doing in the river. The district's been in existence for a little over 40 years, and we've learned a lot. And, you know, originally the idea was to get water away from people as soon as we can. And we really lost opportunities on really the best way to handle that water for the long-term effects. And the foresight that the City of Littleton and South Suburban had in saving the floodplain, preserving the park as a floodplain, was just outstanding, and it's really great we have the opportunity to even be talking about this today. And so we have really come around with our approaches, and there is a little bit more risk involved. We're not building structures that are hardened to last a 100-year storm event. But with that risk, we're also maintaining the natural beneficial functions of a floodplain, which has just really extraordinary benefits to everyone. And so with the district being involved in the project, you have long-term maintenance. Once we put funding in, we're committed to making sure that we maintain the facilities. And so we have that responsibility, so we're also very aware of making sure we're making the appropriate risks. And we've got a really good team who has really good experience. And we've also done several projects lately with this riffle idea. And that underneath foundation of the rock and the hard lining really checks you in for the high events. We might see a little bit of maintenance that might be required in the future, but the district will be coming in and doing that, and we're actually pretty good at providing that service. So we're really excited to team with you, and we look forward to moving forward if that's what you decide.
Does anybody have any questions?
And you're in for $4 million, right?
Yeah, we're 50-50 partners. We're committed to providing what we can in the South Platte River.
Thank you.
Okay. Phil?
Yeah, one last question for Charlie. We have a motion that's before us with a resolution. Does this provide for the appropriation of the funds from the 2011 budget?
Yes.
Thank you.
I would suggest that the council and the South Suburban Board tonight take action to approve this project to move forward with the intergovernmental agreement.
I just have a point of order. When we close a public hearing and make a motion and have discussion, is it appropriate for South Suburban Board to discuss with us, or will they need to have their own discussion? Kay, do you know?
I think first I have to call a special meeting to order for South Suburban.
Okay.
And that, then we can have a discussion if you have any questions at that time. So as far as point of order, I don't know if you guys do your voting first or we call our meeting first. Dave, do you know?
I don't think it matters.
Okay. But I know I have to.
We've done it both ways over the years.
Okay.
Okay.
What works for you, Debbie?
Well, we can close the public hearing and then council can discuss and then vote. And then you can open yours, discuss and vote. Okay. I need a motion.
Madam Chairman, I move the public hearing be closed and the amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with the Urban Drainage and Flood Control District and the South Suburban Parks and Recreation District for enhancements to the South Platte Park or excuse me, the South Platte River be approved with the appropriation of $88,000 for the project.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Discussion?
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Peggy?
I just want to make a comment.
Jerry?
I think, this time of economic times that we're in, spending a lot of money on something like this might seem unusual. But as a fly fisherman, hanging out by a river, the sound of hearing water like this, especially so close to a city, I think is a wonderful thing to have for all of us. I think also those, the point bars it's a relatively safe way to get down close to the water for folks who want to maybe just wade a little bit in. But I think it's a fantastic thing, and it's quite a project to have right in here in the city of Littleton.
Thank you. Bruce?
I just think this is just one more opportunity for the city of Littleton to have what is a crown jewel and an envy of everybody in the Denver metro area. And with this one additional step, it'll just make it that much better for all the people who live in the city and the people from the metro area that enjoy the South Platte corridor.
Okay.
Mayor.
Jim?
Bruce Stallman brought up earlier about the testimony tonight that had to do with the fishing pier, and I just would like to make sure the engineers provide the best fishing opportunities you've got from that pier.
Phil, did you have any?
Just with this, as the economic times have changed, this project has been long in germination. It's been careful in putting it together. I can remember Todd before when I was on the board. So the discussion has been good. There's a tremendous partnership that's been put together. The funding is actually half coming from urban drainage. The other half is being split a third and two-thirds between the city and South Suburban. And so we have the funding within the budget, and it's a year that we're gonna have a general fund small surplus in this. I think it's one that the time is right, and as we've seen from some of the pictures that Dave and Troy provided, it's an opportunity to get something started, get them in, see the impact, and then allow for the project to go with its additional phases after there's learning. It's a very thoughtful approach in looking to develop the jewel that we do have. And it would be kind of nice for Hank to have a few cousins around.
Peggy?
Yes, I think this is a wonderful way for the city to leverage an investment in what was referred to as our crown jewel. It will provide more for our own citizens. It will, I think, attract more residents to Littleton, particularly another enhancement or evidence of this being the best place in Colorado to raise kids. So hopefully families with kids will be even more attracted to move here. And as a nice side effect, I think people will spend money when they come also to enjoy this part of the river. So.
Anybody else?
Just clarification where the money comes from that the city of Littleton will spend. Charlie, could you mention that?
The money comes from the Open Space Fund. We have a partnership with Arapahoe County. They collect 1/4 cent sales tax in Arapahoe County, and our share of it goes into our Open Space Fund, and that's where this money is coming from.
And it cannot be used except for that purpose, right? The open
Similar
space.
purposes, acquisition of open space, maintenance, and for projects just as this. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Any other comments, council? I would just say, I think it was sometime spring or summer of 2009, and I was riding along the bike trail, and as I came around Carson, I saw Cecily out picking weeds or some such thing, and I pulled over to say hi and talk to her, and she started talking about this idea she had about helping to restore the river and talking to me about some of the things that were going on that were concerning her. And it's just nice to see that this is finally coming to fruition. she's no longer working with the South Platte Group, but this is certainly a testament to the work that she did, and I think, none of this stuff happens overnight. It does take years and years and years for it to come to completion, but the other comment I wanted to make is that the South Platte Park, I'm blessed to have it in my district, and it is a precious gem for the entire community, and not just Littleton. I'm not happy about the disruption. I'm not happy about the semis and the trucks and the noise and the dust and the disturbances that are going to be out there. But I think that it's going to be incumbent upon all of us to be public servants to the community and let them, help with the communication and get it out there, and also to make sure that we are continuing to protect this place. And do everything that we can for it. I think in the end, it will enhance it, and while I respect all you fishermen, I'm also very conscientious of the fact that it is a natural area and a home for hundreds and thousands of different wildlife, and so the enhancement here will also improve the conditions for them, which are degrading. So clearly, I will support this. Council, are we ready to take a vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries.
Okay.
I would like to call to order a special meeting for South Suburban Park and Recreation District, December 6, 2011. And I'll take comments from our board, starting with whomever.
I would just like to say that I grew up not far from here, and I was a senior in high school, graduating the week of the 1965 flood. And I remember it very well. All the kids I graduated from high school with had jobs that summer. And the Corps of Engineers came riding in on their white horse to our rescue and built Chatfield Dam so that we would never go through a flood like that again. And I just find it ironic that now I'm sitting here tonight, coming full circle to salvage the river that at one point did so much damage. And I just think it's a testament to everybody here and everybody throughout the metro area that has shown such love for this river to try and get it back to where it belongs.
This must be reminiscing because I was just thinking that I was a freshman in Montana when I read about this flood and the ensuing damage, so this was nationwide news, and I never, in my wildest dreams, ever I thought I'd be sitting here having anything to do with the Platte, but it's really my honor to be here. And as Pam says, salvaging the river in yet another way. This could have gone any way after the flood, and I think I've been so inspired by the story of the people of Littleton who said, no, you're not going to channel this. We're going to buy this. We're going to make this even better. We're going to make something good come out of tragedy. And I think that that's been done. And so I echo your thoughts, Debbie, that I'm not looking forward to looking at bulldozers or heavy equipment down in there, but hopefully it will be quick, and obviously I think the benefits of it are long-term and well-needed. So, it's just another chapter in the river's life, and certainly a testament to the people of Littleton.
I think this is another great example of South Suburban and the city of Littleton working together on very worthwhile projects. While we don't get any money from Arapahoe County Open Space, we hope we can, help keeping the funding coming for this project to the completion. And possibly we can get Arapahoe County to kick in some of their excess funds. But I think it's a great project. And again, thanks to Urban Drainage for, again, working with us as they have over the years. The relationship's been great.
Mike, I don't know if you can.
I can't go back and reminisce about 1965, I'm not that old. But, from having been in town for a number of years and seen the opportunities that exist on the South Platte River, South Platte Park, and be in a position to move enhancements along so that it can be a more useful river and provide additional recreation opportunities, and to see all the partners that have come together and know about the long-term relationship between South Suburban, City of Littleton, Urban Drainage commitment to make this move forward. Support the project and say I'm just pleased to be a part of helping it happen.
Well, I'll finish up here. One of the things that South Suburban does best is work with teams and work with partners. And it is, as Sue said, a privilege to be here and to be partnering again. And I'd like to let you know, and you probably have some of this information, that we need to thank Littleton and the residents of South Suburban, because without going and passing at 67% the 2011 1 mil fund, we would be hard-pressed to come up with money. We also have money in this project from our 2000 1 mil fund. And so it is thanks to a lot of residents that we are going into that source. But so last year, or I shouldn't say last year, this year, when we had that vote and we passed by 67%, that was terrific. And it actually was in 2010, but the money came available in 2011. So anyway, thanks to a lot of people for it. But again, it is a privilege for South Suburban to again be partnering with everyone. And speaking of the consultants, I had to say when I was reading the report, and I don't know about the rest of you, I found it very lyrical, and the writing was spectacular. And it was not, I looked at this and I thought, oh my God, this is going to be dry. The part I couldn't get over were the Latin words for the bugs, the insects, and everything. But it's a great project to be a part of, and it'll be interesting to see how long it takes us to get it all done. But if there's not any further comments, I'd call for a motion for our board.
I'll move that the board approve the South Platte River Enhancement Plan and approve an amendment to the existing intergovernmental agreement with the Urban Drainage and Flood Control District and the City of Littleton.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
The vote was 5-0 in favor.
Thank you. At this time, I will adjourn the special meeting for South Suburban Park and Recreation District.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
And at this time, we will take a 5-minute recess and then return back at 20 after.
And just to point out, somebody left keys up here.
They're Wendy's.
Oh, they're Wendy's?
They're still
Whoa.
the cities.
Whoa, okay.
The CarMax, let's see, CarMax final plat. And
Glenn's obviously ready.
let's see, Glenn.
Glenn V.
Yeah.
You learned that from Charlie.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Hopefully, we can get the overhead up, and I'll just do a brief presentation about what we're asking you to approve tonight. A quick history on the CarMax site. This is a site that's 9.5 acres located on the east side of Broadway Road, just south of Littleton Avenue. It's been a car dealership since 1967. It was most recently owned and operated by Burt Automotive, and I think they've been closed and the site's been vacant for, I think, about 3 years now, maybe 3 to 5 years. What CarMax is proposing is to scrape the site and redevelop it and provide a new 27,000 square foot dealership. I won't go into a whole lot of detail because there's folks from CarMax here that want to tell you about the dealership, the building, and their business plan. So I'll hold off on that. And then most recently, because this site is actually a unique zoning situation where we have two different districts that split the site. What this did is precipitated a couple of conditional use permits that went through the Planning Commission on October 24th. The area that's marked T is a transitional zone. It's meant as a buffer land use area between the heavier, more intense B2 district. So what that does not allow is does not allow a dealership or a building to be located there, but it does allow parking to be located in that T district subject to a conditional use permit. So that was the first CUP that went to the Planning Commission. The second one was for used auto sales in the B2 district, and that's another requirement of that zoning district. Both those conditional use permits were approved, and then the third item that the Planning Commission looked at was a preliminary plat, which is the precursor to the final plat, as you're well aware of. So those were all approved by a unanimous vote of 8-0. Or excuse me, 7-0. They don't have any extra members yet. So what we're asking you, the council to approve is three things. The final plat, which is really a very basic document. It's one lot. The only other provision was we did provide or require an additional 3-foot roadway easement along Broadway Road, and that's for additional sidewalk, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail later on. And also, the preliminary plat, we look at the final plat, make sure it matches. In this case, it does, and that's a joint effort of the Community Development Department and Public Service Department. We kind of jointly look at subdivision plats. This is unusual because it's a commercial plat. Again, it's one lot, so it's a very simple document. And then also attached to your report is a subdivision improvement agreement. This is the agreement that CarMax signs, the mayor signs, and basically commits to them putting in and guaranteeing that all the public improvements go in. And in this case, it's additional sidewalk areas, curb and gutter. They're rebuilding a median out on Broadway Road because of the circulation has changed a little bit. And then finally, we have a waiver that's being requested by the applicant. And let me show you a little bit more detail on that. I think you can see that the cross-section of the principal arterial, I think, or major arterial on the bottom of this sheet shows basically a 9-foot wide detached sidewalk with approximately 6 feet of space between the back of curb and that sidewalk. And the intention is that that would be a sidewalk that would be shared with pedestrians as well as bicycles. That's why it's that wide. This has caused some concern with the applicant for a couple of different reasons. One is you might notice that this is typically would happen in 120 feet of right-of-way. We only have 100 and 100 feet of right-of-way, really, for Broadway Road. This is not a rezoning. It's not somewhere where we can exact additional right-of-way. So we have some limited space. In addition to that, there's some drainage requirements where everything, currently now, there is no retention requirements on the site. Everything just sheet flows, stormwater goes right out into Broadway Road. As part of the, to clean the stormwater before it actually goes into the storm drain system, they are putting a swale in. If they have a detached sidewalk, it just creates some engineering issues because they're putting stormwater underneath the sidewalk, and then it's coming back underneath the sidewalk and going into the retention area and then ultimately into the storm drain system. And then the third reason is because we have that T zoning district that runs right along the backside of their building, they can't really push the building further back. So they have really limited area in front of the building, and that's really the gold medal area for a car dealership, is that display area in front of the building to Broadway Road. So for those reasons, staff thinks it's a good waiver. So instead of the 9-foot detached sidewalk, they are going to reconstruct the area and provide an 8-foot sidewalk directly adjacent to the curb. On both sides of the site, to the north and the south, there's actually a 5-foot sidewalk that's attached to the back of curb. So it's consistent, and ultimately, I think it's also consistent with a previous approval for Hyundai. I think they did actually a 6-foot sidewalk. So we're trying to widen the sidewalks up, and I think it's a good waiver. So at this point, we'd be happy to answer any questions that the council might have.
Jerry?
As I go through the information, thank you. Back on page 4, first full paragraph, says in the proposal drainage plan.
Yes.
Can you explain that more clearly for me? Just help me to visualize it a little bit.
Right. So in essence, in order to clean the stormwater that's coming off the sidewalk, it's a standard operating procedure to put it into a swale that's landscaped to kind of clean off the oils before it goes back into the retention area. And let me just show you the site plan, and I can point this out in a little bit more detail. So in this case, there's a swale at the north. Stormwater comes across. It will go into this water quality swale, and that'll be all along the frontage here. It's basically this landscaped area. Comes back into an underground retention area, and then my understanding is it will bleed off into the storm drain system. So it's a very easy to just sheet flow right into the swale. But once you put a sidewalk over there, now you're going underneath the sidewalk. The stormwater is going to move along the frontage of the roadway, has to come back across underneath the sidewalk, and then into ultimately this underground retention area.
Glenn, just to help me on this, while you're going through that, which side is Broadway and which side is towards Lincoln, and north and south, however you want to do that? I think I know what it is, but because the credit union is over there.
I presume the north is the top. So Glenn, the water, when you say it's going to go under the sidewalk, what, into some pipes?
I'm not really sure whether it be a pipe or some kind of conduit or some kind of concrete structure. It's doable. I think the biggest issue would be it would require additional right-of-way and possibly narrow that site between the building and the frontage area.
Then on the sidewalk itself, now it's to the right of the vegetation or to the left?
From how you're looking at it or from how I'm looking at it?
It'd be yours too, I think.
East or west?
The sidewalk
Broadway
is,
side or?
Sidewalk is right up against this line.
So it still goes along Broadway then?
Right.
Okay.
And then the landscaping will be there, and then they have a short screen wall, and then their cars.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Bruce?
Glenn, can you talk a little bit about why the T-zone even exists in this location, given that it's transitioning from, what, the city of Centennial? It seems very odd that this particular parcel would be split the way it is split. Is there any history or reason to it that you guys were able to discern?
Perhaps Ms. Dickinson can talk about the history of this site.
Terrific.
And Glenn, you could lower the microphone for her.
You know, it was like that before I came here. So my best guess is that years ago, probably in the 60s or right after we got zoning in the city, my best guess is that they may have zoned that back piece transitional because of the residential that was an unincorporated Arapahoe County at the time. That's my best guess. And so the car dealerships that's been there all that time, that back parcel had always been used for parking.
Okay.
And, you know, with the demoing of the project and building a new project, and since the older dealerships had been there, we had, council had amended the zoning code to create that conditional use requirement for used car dealerships. And with a new owner coming on board, wanting to redevelop the site, I mean, we had to live with a transitional zone district or do a complete rezone of the property, and they chose to not go through the rezoning and just to maintain the restricted parking use on the T district. But
Yeah.
that's my best guess, is that sometime way in the past, it was someone's desire to put a transitional zoning on that to be a buffer between the residential and the more heavier commercial uses on Broadway.
Okay.
Because the transitional zone district has restricted uses in it. I mean, you can do office use in there, but you can't do retail uses in transitional. You can't do automobile sales in transitional. So this conditional use that was approved for this use here is only allowing them to use it for parking for their employees.
Okay. Let me do this. I guess Councilmember Valdez and I had received communique from a fellow named Dan Flynn who lives actually, well, you can't see it on this map, but he lives a little bit further south on Broadway, and he's got, I think he's actually a bit further south. Huh? No, that's Broadmoor. I think that's the accounting office. I think he's a block south. Doesn't matter. Anyway,
I had my sign in his yard.
Had it. Nice. All right. Well, maybe you do know that. But be that as it may, he expressed some concerns on a land use basis, and I actually wrote him back, and I copied Michael and Kirsten, the acting city attorney, and need to disclose that I had that communication with him. I don't believe it in any way impairs my ability to render a fair decision based on the testimony that is being presented and will be presented, but I want to disclose that there was communication that was ex parte in nature. His concerns, which he's expressed previously prior to this particular redevelopment, had to do with broader land use issues in that whole Broadway corridor. I guess the one question I want to ask you guys is, this is not a rezoning application, which you just indicated as well.
That's correct. It's a plat.
It's strictly a platting for purposes of a building permit. The ability to, and the platting itself, really, we're being asked basically to agree to the sidewalk variance, if you will, but there's really not, other than the plat itself just sort of says they're going to put the building and they're going to,
Well, the plat itself actually creates the lot lines,
Okay.
easements. The waiver grants, is regarding the location and the style of the sidewalk.
right.
And then you're also executing a subdivider improvements agreement to guarantee that those public improvements are put in. The site development plan that's approved after the plating and before building permit sets the building location and the detention and all. However, that's all been reviewed before the plat has come to you, so.
And that's all subject to DRC, Design Review
Right,
Committee review
right. I
and
mean,
sign off?
Yeah, there's been
Okay.
a conceptual site plan reviewed and the preliminary plat also shows those kind of improvements on it too.
Okay. And I think really the issue maybe from Dan's perspective ends up being is maybe you view CarMax certainly as a bird in the hand. I mean, the Burt dealership had been vacant for what, over a couple years? And there are certainly well-documented issues in terms of just property development or commercial development up and down the Broadway corridor there. Absent CarMax doing something like this, realistically, based on your guys' expertise, what other types of developments could potentially go in there, which would of necessity require probably a rezone absent some sort of a car dealership?
Well, let me, one actual user we did see look at the site was Kohl's. They're a retailer that will stand alone. A lot of retailers won't. They want to be with other retailers to kind of create that synergy. I believe they found the site too small. I mean, we're less than 10 acres. But there doesn't mean that there couldn't be another retailer like that out there. But I think we would agree. I mean, the vacant site is kind of a blight on the area too. So quite frankly, staff is pretty excited to get another user like this in there.
Right, okay. Okay. Go ahead, I'll stop there and let somebody else dive in.
Jim?
I just will clarify in the email that Mr. Flynn sent to you guys, he gave his address as 6089, and it is not on the map.
Yeah, it is, I drew it down on mine.
Okay, any other questions? Bruce?
Glenn, the one thing that I think this brings to a point for us at this point in Littleton is it's probably time to look at the Broadway overlay for the comp plan and begin to have some idea of where this is all going to be going. The previous overlay was done when C-470 didn't exist and when Highlands Ranch wasn't there. And I've heard several people say in a real negative way that Broadway's the back door to the city of Littleton, and clearly it should be one of our front doors. So as we move out of the economic doldrums, we clearly have to have a path to know where we're going.
Michael?
Just as a response to that, we will be talking about comp plan update as part of your goal-setting session over the next, well, when we get there, as we continue to push it down. But because I think the councilman has a very valid point in terms of really looking at our priorities and what can we, did you use the word doldrums?
Yeah.
What can we take advantage of being in that situation so that when the economy does break loose, we're prepared and we're not hurrying to catch up. And it's not just in the comp plan update. Glenn and I are starting to talk about subdivision reg updates and those other items in there, and we'll be talking to you about all of those and getting your blessing on really starting to work on those in some depth. So thanks for bringing that up.
Jerry?
From time to time, I do walk over there by Mr. Flynn's house and that whole stretch of Broadway all the way down to Highlands Ranch on both sides. Is there any reason we couldn't just move the sidewalk off of Broadway just for that little bit of a stretch, just a few feet, instead of having it right up there against the street?
Right now, with the roadway easement that's proposed on the plat, that's basically the back of the sidewalk. So in essence, you could, and I think what the city landscape architect's concern was, if you don't really get a wide enough area, you really can't get a planting there, and it ends up being kind of a trash collector. So I think they generally would like, if you're going to have a space between the curb and the sidewalk, I think he would like a minimum of 3 feet in there in order to get some kind of plant material that would stick. So then maybe we don't have to move it 6 feet, but we're still pushing the sidewalk and narrowing the side a bit.
But if they're requesting an 8-foot sidewalk, so if you took away 3 feet, then it'd be 5 feet just like the other sidewalks, right?
Oh, true, if we went back to a 5-foot sidewalk?
Right, but, and then, I know it would have to dog leg off a little bit off the street.
Yeah.
But it would just be, I would think, just a little bit more appealing. I mean, I'm just trying to think of better ways to make that part of Broadway look a little better. And I think with CarMax coming in, that's wonderful. And it'd be a great thing for them to do, just to spice it up there a little bit.
Yeah.
I just for discussion purposes, Jerry, with that, one of the things that I think is nice, at least looking at the site plat now, is there's vegetation on a side of the sidewalk. It's just not on the roadside. So there is a vegetation that would be, at least by my aesthetics, an improvement along that section that would be a front for their wall. Question is, do you move it to the other side? I don't know. I don't know if there's enough there, but that's.
Was that considered at all?
I believe it was. The other issue is also the slopes on the swale then. I think they're kind of at the minimum 4-to-1 slope. You start pushing the sidewalk over, those start getting a little steeper and it becomes more of a concern. You can't get plant material to grow on it and issues with that. But
Let me help you on this one.
Charlie will help me on this one.
The landscape architect, David Flagg, prefers 8 feet of landscape area in order to get trees and significant landscaping in there. And in order to do that and maintain a wide sidewalk, it's better to put the sidewalk adjacent to Broadway. In this case, we would prefer a minimum sidewalk of 6 feet, such as we have at Hyundai to the south, right at Panama Drive. That's 6 feet. In this project, we're getting more than the 6 foot of sidewalk. North of here, the sidewalk is adjacent to Broadway, all the way north. South, it's adjacent to Broadway, all the way to the south. So we could go off center and move it away, but in reality, you're not going to get the quality of landscaping that David Flagg would prefer in this area. You might end up with a lot of rock. You might end up with, as Glenn described, a trash area. You wouldn't get the quality of tree growth that you need to have, and that's what David wants, the 8 feet. I hope that explains
It does.
the position.
Thank you.
Council, any other questions? Okay,
Thank you, Mayor.
thank you.
How do I
Yep.
switch over to?
I have no idea.
Okay. Good evening. My name is John McNamara, and I'm a real estate manager with CarMax,
Talking to the mic.
based in Richmond, Virginia. Sorry about that. And I realize that we're focused here on the plat, but I wanted to take a moment to just kind of talk a little bit about CarMax, who we are and what we do. I think we had an opportunity this past spring to address the council, but I know that there's been some changes, so we wanted to come back and talk a little bit about the company just at a high level, so you understand who we are. CarMax is a retailer. It's the largest retailer of used automobiles in the United States. We pioneered the used car superstore concept in Richmond, Virginia back in 1993 after surveying quite a few consumers and trying to understand what it is that they liked and disliked about buying a car, new, used, what have you. And we built our business model around that. Since then, we've become a Fortune 500 company, and we're traded on the New York Stock Exchange. We currently operate 107 stores in over 50 markets. We have a store in Colorado Springs. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that. And we're working on a couple of different projects here in the greater Denver area. Last year, we sold almost 400,000 vehicles. And this is actually probably our proudest accomplishment. We're one of the top 100 companies to work for, rated by Fortune Magazine for 7 years running now. And we're also on the Fortune list of America's most admired companies. So just a quick brief look at where we are in terms of geography in the United States. We're in a growth mode right now. We've opened 5 stores this year. Next year, we plan to open between 5 and 10 new stores and on beyond that. To take you into the site that we're talking about on Broadway, again, this is the old Buick GMC dealership, the Burt dealership. Broadway is at the top of the page, running across east-west, even though the street actually runs north-south. As you can see, we're going to be basically redeveloping the entire site. The building will be demolished. The site will be torn up and redone. You'll notice, and this is purely just a product of 60s development standards, there isn't really any landscaping on the site at all. There's no real storm infrastructure. All water sheet flows across the top of the site, right out into Broadway and into a drainage structure at the top left. So we think we're going to be making quite a bit of an improvement here. It's going to go from almost zero pervious area to about 33% of open space. The building will be smaller, it'll be laid out differently, there'll be significant landscaping along Broadway, and we're really excited to come to this market. So as you can see, this is a little bit what I'm talking about. In addition to that, we're closing a number of access points from South Broadway, which we think will make Broadway operate a little bit better and a little bit safer. So this is that layout that we're working towards. You can see the landscaping and the significant change in the layout of the site and the building. Some elevations, and I have a rendering as well. It's a split face and smooth face masonry block building. It's designed to look more like a retail store than a car dealership. The Peak and the Carmack sign is kind of our brand, and we use the warmer earth tones for the color of the building.
How come it's not blue?
The whole thing? We just stick to the Peak.
It's a local joke.
Okay.
Nobody gets the joke, though.
Some of us do.
There's an I-25 near building that is a little bit different.
Yeah, if your sign were about 10 times larger, you could compete with IKEA.
Right. I get you now. Okay. And this is kind of an artist rendering of what the store will look like once we build.
That's the Broadway side?
This is the Broadway side, yes. That's correct, right? Am I thinking about that the right way?
That's south side.
Actually, the Broadway side might technically be the other side, but this is more of, to Jake's point, this is more of a kind of a generic look at the building. We have different ways that we shape the building and structure the building based on the shape and size of the site.
Go back on your map. So the placement of the building on the lot after it's redeveloped, okay, that's what I was looking at.
Yeah. And you'll notice that the building is closer to the South Broadway side. It stays out of that transitional zone. The transitional zone is the width of that green area, and then it runs north, or Page North, into what is the customer employee area, which is what we're allowed to use as customer employee parking through the conditional use. And everything else that's, other than that, is in the B2 district to the east, to the west.
One entrance off Broadway?
Correct.
You guys are 27,000 square foot on the building, and the old building that was there was how big, Glenn?
Somewhere in the 60,000?
Okay, so
58,000 square feet.
a third.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that part that's on the left over here, that's the Peak Park?
Right, yeah, I don't know the best way for me to point this out for you, but I can point it out on the screen if that helps. I know that's behind you, but this is that peak, that architectural feature that you were
Yeah, so if we
you're
click
seeing.
forward, because I think you said that was not the Broadway side, but it is the Broadway side.
Well, there's two. There's one here, and then there's one on this side. And
Yeah.
we designed the site so that customer traffic flows into this now one curb cut that's replacing, I think there was 3 or 4. Customers will come in here, and they park in this customer employee lot. And what we do is we try to bring our customers into the building first through this This is another architectural feature similar to what you saw with the CarMax Peak. And what we try to do is bring them into the sales area and explain to them, basically what I just explained to you is who we are and what we do in terms of the sales process. So not so much the CarMax Fortune 500 piece, but hey, we sell cars in a different way. We don't haggle on prices. It's a very transparent experience. You can choose from a number of different finance companies. You don't have to negotiate financing. It's not tied to your trade-in. Everything is a separate, transparent process. Our sales associates get paid the same commission, whether they sell a base model Toyota or Jaguar. And we try to get them comfortable with what they're about to experience. There's an ability to do a lot of high-tech inventory searches in the sales area and really learn about CarMax and who we are. And then the customers will come out this other feature out onto this display lot.
That's a gate over.
Yes, this up here is actually what's called an embassy-style Delta Gate. The display area is secure. Another feature of our layout and the customer experience is we try to make sure that we don't have customer traffic driving through the sales area where people are trying to shop and walk around with their children and that kind of thing. So that gate is designed to obviously pop open when you want to have a test drive. And the customer will go out onto this access drive here and then out onto Broadway on a predefined test drive route. So there's a lot of things about the layout that we consider and that go into that whole customer experience in the shopping process.
It looks like you just described that the display area for your cars is discreetly secure. In other words, somebody can't steal a car and drive it across either directly onto Broadway or directly south. Would that be a correct statement?
That's correct.
The future expansion area, what are your thoughts? And in the meantime, before it's developed, will it be asphalt, or are you talking about landscaping?
No, that's all grass.
Okay,
Everything
so
that's on here is green as grass, and then you can see the trees. Future expansion area is a bit of a misnomer. Given the current zoning, we couldn't expand that for anything other than more customer and employee parking.
Right, okay.
I don't know if the transitional zone will change, but we decided not to go through any type of rezoning process, and we thought this layout could work for us, given that we were told that that buffer was important to the neighbors in Centennial on the other side of the fence.
We should think about open space money.
Is there a lane for slowing down and accelerating into before you enter or exit?
No, there is not. What we did was we moved that curb cut. It's actually not the exact location of the old one. We did move that with staff's recommendation to line up with another curb cut on the other side of Broadway, and closing the other curb cuts were the improvements that we made to traffic flow.
Do you have other dealerships that would be proximate to similar residential areas?
Yes.
What's been your experience with the interaction between the dealership in those areas and the residential neighbors, I guess, just in terms of incremental traffic, noise, property values? Is there anything you can share?
Well, yeah, there's a few things. So you mentioned noise, first of all. So one of the things that we do very differently from your typical car dealer is we don't have any outdoor loudspeakers. We thought that kind of detracted from that retail experience as well. All of our sales associates have either cell phones or pagers, and that's how we do all the communication throughout the site. All of our service departments across the country are conditioned, fully air conditioned and heated. So we don't do any service work with the doors open, which cuts down on quite a bit of noise for the neighbors that are behind us. One of the other big things that we have in all of our developments, and to be honest is in all development code these days, is with respect to lighting. So old developments from the 60s, car dealerships, they'll have the floodlights, for lack of a better term, spraying light all over the site. As part of the process with staff, we go through a whole photometric plan to make sure that there's light spillage that meets the code requirements, and so there's no light trespass onto the neighbors behind the site. So there's a lot of things that we've learned over the years that are important to the neighbors. Many of those are solved by current development codes, and so it's just a natural improvement anyway. But we also think that the way we operate our site is just inherently better for neighbors. In addition to that, we met with all the neighbors as part of the Littleton process. We went through the entire development with them, answered questions. We actually made some changes based on their feedback. We moved where our dumpster location is. so that it's not up against the neighborhood, and so it's less noisy for them when there's trash pickup. So for the most part across the country, we have really good relationships with the neighbors. And, you know, if they have any concerns or complaints, we just recently, in the project we did in Massachusetts, contacted the neighbors that are very close to the site and let them know how they could get in touch with the location general manager if they had any concerns.
Jerry?
And the cars will unload from where?
The car carriers will come in the same access, and this lot is designed to, it's tough to tell with the trees, but it's designed to have the proper turning radiuses for both the fire trucks and for the 18-wheeler car carriers. And what we try to do is offload in this area roughly. It keeps the car carriers away from the customer entrance here, and this is where we bring those vehicles into the facility, into the secured facility through what we call here the presentation lanes. So the car carriers will park generally somewhere over here.
How many
and unload.
are we talking per day, per week?
Honestly, I'd have to get you that answer. It differs based on the size of the facility, the sales estimates. I don't know. I'd have to find that out.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
At least well into the property.
Yeah, that's fair
But
point.
what's your maximum number of cars there to sell?
On the display area? Jake, can you help me on that one? How many spaces are out there? Okay. He's going to pull it up on the plan specifically, but I think he said we're in the neighborhood of roughly 350 spaces out front.
How
And
many?
that's, again, one of the...
350?
350, yeah. What we try to do is, one of our equities for our customers is that, you know, they can come to CarMax and shop and not have to go anywhere else because we have every make and model, and they can compare them side to side. So we try to keep a good amount of inventory out there.
So I have a question, maybe Charlie can answer. I just saw something come across the email from one of these intergovernmental things the other day. The semi-permeous concrete, is it? A permeable concrete?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Is that of any value in
I
a
wouldn't do
project
that
like
here,
this?
no.
No, I just was asking, so,
At this location, I would not.
okay.
No.
I just,
Their drainage plan works pretty good here, realizing that the existing site is 100% runoff. We're getting a significant improvement because of this.
okay, thank you.
Charlie, before you leave, this section of Broadway, from kind of Orchard there, has some interesting lane shifts, and is...
Unique, yes.
I just said interesting, you could say unique. Is there going to be some changes, and when you talk about, Glenn, I think, mentioned modifications to the median. Can someone, is that mapped out, that you can show us that drawing, or?
I don't have one, but I can tell you that there are several driveway accesses from Broadway to the site today. All but one gets removed. What this dealer is doing is funneling all traffic through the one access point. So there are several driveways that'll be closed. That is very good. What's also good is they're closing a median island on Broadway at their expense to prevent left turn movements at that location. That is also very good. I don't want to be the salesman for this project, but between landscaping, drainage, and the traffic pattern that's going to be established, the city comes out ahead very well.
There's two curb cuts that go into where the credit union is to the north of this property?
Yeah, that's a separate property.
Okay,
Yeah.
and those...
Those won't be affected.
Okay, so there'll still be two curb cuts that go into that?
Yes, that's correct. I was just trying to think to make sure that there are two, yes.
That's my credit union,
Yeah,
so I know.
okay, you know that then. But as I said, we're reducing the number of driveways from Broadway onto the site. That reduces traffic conflicts, and cutting one median cut in there is also a significant improvement.
Jerry?
Question on traffic again, Charlie. So currently, like, if you go into some of those dealers that are over there now, and if you miss the entrance after slamming your brakes on, then you have to go to the next entrance. What will be the next choice for someone to go to
If they're coming southbound, it's a U-turn at Orchard. If they're going northbound, it's,
and you missed the turn.
you miss the turn, it's,
You're into the credit union, but you can't.
you go
turn
to
left.
Dodge, buy a car there.
No, the next
I'm not
curb,
buying a Dodge.
the next curb cut is the first one at the credit union.
Yeah, you would be able to turn into the credit union
which
and
you
might
can
be able to get,
You can make a left
stop
turn.
there and
You can
park
make a
your
left
car.
turn out of there.
Yeah, because from Littleton Boulevard, of course, there's
Yeah, you
nothing
can turn
to
east
get
on
to from there.
yeah.
Go to the high
All right,
school.
cool. I'm just trying to think, I don't want to, the street is a little bit wider there, isn't it?
I think it's 3-lane.
There's, because of the jog in the street with the left turn lanes that are coming up at, what's that, Ida, and then at Littleton Boulevard, it continues to be 2 lanes until you get up by Champ, and then you get a right turn lane to go east on Littleton Boulevard.
You know, there's actually 4. You have
Yeah,
the left turn lane,
right.
the right turn lane, and the 2 lanes.
There's
that-
2 left turn lanes to go west on Littleton Boulevard.
Having dropped my son off at Littleton High School, I've traveled that one a bit.
Just a couple times?
Yeah, just a couple times.
As I said one time, we have 40,000 traffic engineers in the city.
Okay, council, do we have any additional questions?
I'd like to know if they're through with their presentation.
Let's continue.
I think I was about finished. Let me check and see if I've got any other slides that I forgot about.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Elevations, the rendering. So, and again, I can answer any other questions.
Any more questions? Can we get a motion? I think that's the next step.
Mayor, if you want, you could break it down into 3 separate motions if you feel you need to. So a motion to approve the plat, a separate one for the agreement, and then the waiver. The first 2 are more ministerial. If city staff is saying that they comply with city code, then it's really just your ratification, and the other one is looking at the criteria and making the decision.
Okay.
I'll go ahead. I move that the final subdivision plat and subdividers improvement agreement for Carmack's final subdivision plat be approved with the waiver to the city's subdivision regulations as described in the staff report and noted on the final plat, and that the council president be authorized to affix her signature thereto.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Bruce?
I think I want to, I guess, communicate back. I think Mr. Flynn and his email had raised not invalid considerations that I think Councilmember Beckman brought up about the comp plan and the Broadway corridor study, which this particular area, certainly from Powers or north down to Arapahoe Road, is an opportunity area. Several years ago, there were some discussions about sort of redevelopment of the bowling alley area north, so forth and so on. But pretty clearly, this should be a gateway area, and Dan obviously has an economic interest in it from his own property. That having been said, this particular property is not a rezone, and he's aware of that. I think when you look at this and you look at their plan, essentially taking what was a 68,000 square foot Stark building at the front of the property and turning it into a 27,000 square foot building that's now moved to the back with landscaping, all of the traffic and drainage attributes that Charlie mentioned. Gentleman presenting talked about earth tones and customer experience and so forth and so on. I think it will be nicely landscaped, a lot of improvements to the property. When you look at the layout of this thing, ballpark half of the property more or less is across the street from the King Soopers Center, the Littleton Square property at Littleton and Broadway. And then most of the other properties that are proximate, or I guess across the street from this particular property, are Zone B1. There's a few that are residential on Broadway, maybe 3 properties, but I think the one, this 5899 property, if memory serves, is an accounting office that's been there for a while also. So predominantly, we're talking about more business-on-business activity in direct proximity here as opposed to residential. Notwithstanding that, I think the way they're putting this thing together should absolutely help with area revitalization, given what they're proposing to do. And I think when you balance it all out, we certainly need to, I think, have Planning Commission start considering a reassessment of the corridor, but from my perspective, on balance, the preponderance of evidence that we're hearing on this particular request suggests to me strongly that this is something that should proceed. And for all those reasons, I'm in favor and will support it.
Okay. Phil?
Taking a look at the project, one is it's a scraping of a property that is entirely impervious at this point in time and has remained vacant. I think if you take a look at their plan for the property, it's going to be one where you're going to at least have some green space that is going to be present. It's going to be viewed from Broadway. The look of the building is a little bit different than our traditional view of, but we actually have a number of automobile dealerships that don't quite have the traditional view along some of that, and particularly the new Hyundai that McDonald has put together is a little bit different and has a little green space around it. This goes even a step further in that regard. I do want to take the opportunity to kind of nudge both community development, city manager, and planning commission as we look at the Broadway corridor. And I guess I would go all the way up and down the Broadway corridor in Littleton. I'm not sure I would stop at Arapahoe and be that discriminatory. I would look at the entire Broadway corridor and what we can be doing to facilitate those good things, whether it's who was the one that used the term doldrums? Was that city man? That was council member Beckman. You know, we have, as a group, talked about taking the opportunities as we can to try and be ahead of the curve in bringing the right businesses to town and whatever we can be doing on that front. In the end, I think the project as it's been presented to us is respectful of the existing zoning, and the waiver on the sidewalk, I think, is reasonable given what else is being done to improve the drainage on the property.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay. Vote on the motion to approve the final subdivision plat, subdivider improvement agreement, and a waiver to the subdivision regulations.
The vote is unanimous.
Welcome to Littleton.
Congratulations.
Okay, 9B is to discuss the third quarter of 2011 financial report. During the 2011 budget workshop, City Council directed staff to prepare quarterly reports during 2011 to be discussed in greater detail with council. This is our third quarter report, and it'll be presented by Doug Farman. Doug?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Just some major financial highlights for the general fund as of September 30th. The city's general fund revenues were 1% above last year's year-to-date total. And the major reason for that was the increase of about 4% in the sales and use tax category for 2011 compared to last year. One drag that's been realized so far on revenues has been the building permits category, which is down 49% compared to last year. This does reflect the poor housing market and continued economic pressures nationally and locally as well. But overall, the general fund revenues in 2011 have met the budget estimates through the quarter end. So I think we can all be happy about that fact. On the expenditure side, the city has realized some additional savings there. As of September 30th, the expenditures were 3% lower than last year, and actually they were lower than the year before, than 2009 as well at that point in time. The main factor for this reduction was lower personnel costs due to some position vacancies and also some position cost efficiencies, such as combining the library and museum director positions that we were able to do earlier this year. There were also some continued cost containment categories that were a catalyst in lowering the costs for this year so far through September 30th, and we expect that to continue through the rest of the year. So overall, in 2011, the city does anticipate revenues to exceed expenditures. And moving into next year, the city's budgeted revenues slightly exceed the expenditures. So we anticipate an ending fund balance of next year of about 16% of expenditures, which would be the same as 2011. I can answer any questions council may have about those results.
Council, Phil?
Just isolating on building permits, because it impacts a fair amount of the economy is construction, where we have had a lot of residents been employed in some of that. Just like mortgage rates, where folks are in a position where we're saying mortgage rates really can't go down any further, is it how much more possible is it to have building permit fees go down?
Just from the information I've been receiving, I think we have been at bottom now, and next year at least the housing market is expected to rise slightly. So hopefully that will be the case, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens in the construction industry.
Yeah, but some of these permits aren't just new homes or buildings, they're renovations to existing homes, which some folks have done. Are we seeing something that's maybe the impact of us getting to more of an infill state and fully built out state for the city?
I think that is correct. I think we are pretty much built out, and a lot of it is renovations, plumbing permits, those type of things.
Jerry?
A couple questions. On the motor vehicle tax, up 12%, what would cause that spike? Do you have any idea?
I think that was mainly just because the previous year was down so far, and I think this year is kind of a bounce back year nationwide, and also for us too. People are starting to feel a little bit more comfortable about buying vehicles, whereas they were pretty tentative about that the previous year.
So then on the cigarette tax, gone up 17%. Same theory? People feel better?
That one's a tough one to predict because supposedly a lot of people were giving up cigarettes, and also a lot of wellness programs, have incentives to get off cigarettes. So I'm not sure why those revenues have really grown this year, but.
And then on miscellaneous, mostly the Sternberg building, is it?
That's correct. That's correct.
Then under expenses, general operations, down 17%. Was that from all the cuts that previous council had worked with the city, across the board type stuff?
Yes, I think the major one there is telecommunications is lower this year compared to the previous year. There was a little bit of a project and also some cost efficiencies done in 2011 compared to 2010, and then a project that was incurred in 2010 that we didn't have to redo again in 2011, so those costs did go down, but I think that was the major component of the general operations department.
Great, thanks, Doug.
Sure.
Bruce?
To Doug, on your council communication, it says fire service contracts are 1% below last year and are at 73% of the annual budget for 2011. I didn't realize those could be variable. I thought they were a fixed, identified contractual amount each year. Why would they be 1% below, and is 73% an appropriate rate for them to be at this point?
We bill those on a quarterly basis, and they are on the actual incurred expenditures now. So that is a little bit different.
And Doug, let me jump in on one of them.
Sure.
This was measured through September, and so that was 9/12 or 75% of the year. So the reason why it's at 73% is versus the 75%.
Yes, sir, that
so
is
it's not as large a variance as you may get just from taking a look at that number.
There were some cost efficiencies in the overtime area, and that is why some of those expenditures are lower in the fire department in this year compared to 2010.
Any other questions? Bruce?
Yeah, I mean, part of this, especially the revenue piece of this generally tends to be, you know, it is in some respects what it is. Certainly if we've got the right, if we're welcoming and we have opportunities for businesses to come in and they can make money in Littleton, which is our objective and intent, you know, in theory, sales tax and use tax is going to go up, and certainly we'll get, you know, see something coming through from CarMax when they start doing their redevelopment. But, you know, I guess kudos certainly to the staff for the vast majority of the, not just reducing the expenses, but getting creative to make sure that the quality of services delivered isn't degraded as expenses go down. So I think what you tend to see on this kind of stuff is a lot of small decisions where people get invested in the process and they start doing smart things and it starts feeding on itself. And there's usually not a lot of silver bullets out there where, you know, you can save $200,000 at a pop. But there's a lot of picking up of small change and being smart in terms of how you operate, and I think, you know, staff's doing a real good job of that, and it needs to be acknowledged. On something sort of parenthetical, and we had communicated earlier this week, I think it was this week, maybe it was last week, on the sewer plant debt, which isn't in any of this, but somebody mentioned mortgage refinancing. And I guess, I wanted just to follow back up. Did you get any more information on the whole issue of refinancing the sewer plant debt?
No, and that is a very good question. I know that the Denver Power and Water Authority periodically looks at that, and we are still trying to get some information back from them, but we really are at their mercy because they're the ones who have issued the debt obligations on that, and most of their loans that we have on the sewer plant were through them, so we have to wait for them to find the right refinancing opportunity, but very legitimate question. I'll get back to you and the council on that.
I'd strongly encourage you guys to get with Englewood and see if there's a way to do that. I mean, given the rate environment, it's got to be cheaper than what we paid, you know, how many every year, you know, 3, 4, 5 years ago. So we should take advantage of it if we can. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Doug. I would just say that sales and use tax, you know, we're up 4%, and we've got some of the spending months coming up, and so I'll tell you what, Littleton seems like the little engine that could. It just keeps chugging away. I talked to Margie at Aspen Grove, and she said that for most of the year, she's noticed foot traffic is down, but people are spending more. Don't understand that, but suffice it to say, the numbers are showing. In fact, the downtown merchants, their numbers are up also for the year. So it's always good to see. 9C, motion to cancel the December 20th regular city council meeting.
So moved.
Okay.
We're on it.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. I would have one suggestion, which might go over like a lead balloon. We have Council University, again, we've got probably a couple hours we didn't get to today, Is there any appetite for using the 20th as a place to drop some more of that?
I will not be
Michael?
here for that.
Okay.
You'd
So
get a lot more done.
you might. But then I'd have to come in and correct
Close
the
over the
work,
line.
so.
And I'm way meaner than he is, so.
Okay. We won't do that. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any other comments? Okay, vote.
The vote is unanimous.
Okay. Comments and reports, city manager.
I will email, since it's late, and just shoot a quick email. I was going to update you on some meetings I had, but they're all just FYIs only.
Okay, city attorney.
I did not.
Okay. Councilmember Cole.
Two things quickly. There's a variety of ways people have been pronouncing Kirsten's first name, and I did verify with her earlier this evening what she had told me before. It is Kirsten, not Kirsten, and so I hope we will all learn to say it that way. And then maybe Kirsten.
Peggy, can I add to that once?
Yeah.
She did give me a clue on how to say her name. It's like beer.
Yeah.
Kier.
No one will ever forget.
Some of us don't drink, so that's not as easy to remember, but anyway. I had asked her maybe a year ago, and then I keep hearing people say it otherwise, so I verified earlier tonight that's how to say her name. As a request, Kirsten, as you work on the update, the redlining, whatever, we don't have in our council rules and procedures anything about canceling meetings. And technically, we don't have to have the meeting on the 20th because charter only requires that we do have them once a month. But for future, we might sometime actually want to cancel one that we have scheduled. So maybe you'd add that in.
Okay.
And then request, Phil gave us a copy of the reminder of the economic breakfast. I didn't know if anybody might want to carpool, and I figured it would be easier to ask right now. So if anybody wants a rider, I'd love to carpool, so
You're not going to walk?
not there.
Okay.
In answer to that, I am planning to go, but I'm leaving there to go to a CML meeting, so I'm not available to give
Okay.
anybody a ride unless you want to go spend the rest of the day with Municipal League.
Jim?
Speaking of the Municipal League, I'll give the report on the CML board meeting. We did welcome Carbondale trustee Elizabeth Murphy, who's replacing our own Michael Penny in the small cities category, and accepted the resignation of Larry Atencio, who's a Pueblo representative for the large category. We interviewed 4 candidates this morning to replace Larry. We accepted the recommendations from the Budget Audit and Management Committee, which is going to include a 3% rebate, Doug, 3% rebate back on dues if we can get it paid by the end of January. We received or heard the updates from the Policy Committee and updates on the next year's annual conference. Had a lunch program by the Department of Local Affairs, and they were very interesting how they're relating now with cities with their budget cuts. And we did an evaluation of the executive director. The Colorado Municipal League's District 3 meeting was held at the new Parker Events Center in November. It was very poorly attended. It happened to be on the Thursday night Bronco game, and so we didn't have a lot of people attend the meeting. Had a nice crowd, I thought, at the Candlelight Walk, and a very interesting tour of the CenturyLink building on Mineral. Some of you may have remembered Andrew Pierce, who was Hudson Gardens horticulturalist, passed away, and Hudson Gardens is taking donations for doing some sort of springtime memorial for him. So if you're interested, you can contact Hudson Gardens about that. And that's it.
Bruce?
Agree with Jim. The CenturyLink tour was very interesting. Just combination of programs that they have in the works, looking at the labs, looking at the op center. It was something else. I had an opportunity to introduce Councilmember Beckman to the Fine Arts Committee, and they had a special meeting on the 1st of December, and I will defer to my fellow Bruce to let him explain what happened there. Also a number of us attended the police department's CALIA certification public interview process last night, and I thought that went very well. And then lastly, of course, the often imitated, never duplicated, always loved and hated Littleton Merchant Plug of the Week. This week goes to a small business owner on the Broadway corridor. How apropos is that? Buck's Small Engine Service, Brad Buck, the owner, he's at 6439A South Broadway, which is pretty much right across the street from the Hyundai dealership. Real nice fella. He's got a Toro dealership. He's reinstituted that location. Repairs lawnmowers, rototillers, chainsaws, and in my case, snow blowers, which comes in pretty handy this time of the year. The phone number is 303-794-6000. That number again, 303-794-6000. Give him a call or stop by, and he can take care of whatever you've got as far as small engine repair is concerned. Thanks.
Jerry?
Heritage High School hosted a wrestling tournament this past weekend, had about 10 teams, and Heritage High School won the tournament.
Very good. Phil?
Yes, wanted to say thank you to Rib City for a tasty dinner tonight. Another one of our South Corridor, Broadway corridor businesses, located on the southwest corner of Broadway and Mineral, just off of where King Soopers is, for those that are familiar with the area. Chamber of Commerce had a number of active meetings this past month in November as well as in December. Healthcare Task Force there is considering some educational components possibly being delivered through YouTube, so stay tuned. And the Economic Development Group has another meeting coming up this Friday, as well as the Economic Development or Economic Forecast Breakfast, which is next Thursday, where we will have a city table at that event. And did mention, although I didn't have an opportunity to introduce Jerry Valdez to the Historic Preservation Board at their last meeting. They did have a couple of certificate of appropriateness reviews, and you may see some new exterior lighting on the Coors building coming up, as well as they're pretty excited about their grant programs for both the Old Tavern as well as the Architect building on the other side of the street. So those folks that are watching Main Street, that's you can thank some of the grant programs for that. And with that,
Bruce?
For me, it's been a great 3 weeks since I was sworn in. I've learned so much about what council does. Everybody has just been very helpful to me, and city staff and council. All in all, I've had several challenges, one of which was this evening with the chair that continued to slip down, and I thought maybe this was one of those tests. I got through that, and I found out which way the button works here to vote, so it's been a great first meeting. I did get introduced to the Fine Arts Committee. They had a special meeting, something that they don't normally do because they're trying to evaluate the workload and the projects that they've taken on. Traditionally, they take on significant projects, 4 big ones each year, and this is one of those committees that is a working committee where the people are expected to actually step out there and do quite a lot of hands-on work, and it doesn't seem to get any lighter, so they were having a special meeting to evaluate how they were going to continue forward with the schedules. And again, I just want to say thank you to the folks who've helped me over the last 3 weeks.
Okay. Is there a Dr. Cog report?
Yes. At the Board of Directors meeting, we had a report from an ad hoc group of Metro Mayor's Caucus and the Metro Area County Commissioners the future transportation funding for the Denver metro area. And we'll be hearing more and more about that as the days go on, and probably Debbie will get involved in that as well. We adopted the fourth quarter policy amendments to the 2012 and 2017 Transportation Improvement Plan and had two very controversial issues. One was seed money for a regional transit-oriented development outside of Denver County. The seed dollars would be leveraged for $2.5 million into a $15 million fund through private funds, but DRCOG turned the proposal down on an extremely split vote. The other thing was programming additional federal funds, federal formula funds, also a split vote, but not quite as bad as the others, but lots of arguments going on. We had several briefing reports and informational items, and on behalf of DRCOG, I was privileged to accept a $4.5 million check from HUD, most money I've ever had in my life held in my hand. And they gave me a check, but I couldn't abscond because there were too many security people around, so that's it.
Hard to cash those, too.
Hard to cash when it's made out to somebody else.
Before we adjourn, I just want to say thank you to staff for helping ease me into this position. And I also want to say thank you to council for helping make it an easy transition and hopefully, well, not as graceful as I would like. I'll get better. Thank you for your patience, and looking forward to the next 2 years. I think it's going to be a real great time, real honor to serve up here with you guys. So before we adjourn, you have a motion?
Well, all you can say is TGIES, right? I move to conduct an executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 24-6-402 sub 4 sub E for determining negotiating positions and instructing negotiators regarding fire partners contract, and pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 24-6-402 sub 4 sub B to confer with an attorney for the city for purposes of receiving advice on legal strategy and actions related to water rights.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, ready to vote?
Requires 5.
That's true.
The motion is unanimous.
Okay, we are adjourned.
You're going to have to get somebody to channel Jose and vote no on this stuff once in a while.